Moe Factz with Adam Curry for August 6, 2022, episode number 85. Fully coof recovered, ready to go to school once again. Adam Curry coming to you from the heart of the Texas Hill Country, and it is time once again to spin the wheel of topics from here to Northern Virginia. Please say hello to my friend on the other end, Mr. Moe Factz.
How you doing, Adam?
Much better. Thank you for asking, Mo. How are you?
I'm doing great. Just ready to get this show in. I'm glad to hear that you beat the coup for the second time.
Yeah, unbelievable, man. That's so debilitating. What a waste of time, this bioweapon they've unleashed on us.
Well, it depends on how you look at it.
Well, that's true. That's a very good point. Hey, man, it's good to hear your voice. I missed you. We don't talk enough, but what we get is what I cherish because I'm ready. And, you know, you've been taking me on an interesting journey in general across all of my thinking and across all of my shows with some of this, like the last episode, man, with the eugenics stuff. That's starting to have some kind of influence on me, Mo. It's, I want you to know, and I have a feeling it's by design.
I just pay attention to everything, and you know the rest. So
that's right.
And then I just kind of come here and share it. And I think we kind of spoke about eugenics through the lens of Roe v. Wade and the current events that were going on.
Yeah.
But now we got to go back, and get back to it. So I guess we need to spin the wheel.
All right, here we go. Spinning the wheel of topics. Round and round it goes. Where it stops, nobody knows except, well, Mo knows because he put together another excellent episode for us. The topic for Moe Factz with Adam Curry, episode 85, is
there a relationship between race and mental capacity?
Well, this is a key question when it comes to eugenics. I've learned that much.
Yes. So what we got to do is we got to take a deeper look at evolution as well as genetics and social Darwinism and their impact on race or how races are viewed. Okay.
So
it's a continuation somewhat of the last show.
Yeah.
But we need to get deeper into the ideology of Darwinism. Some might look at it as a religion.
Yeah, the more I look at it, the more I learn. And it seems like there's a whole bunch of stuff I missed about Darwinism and Darwin and all of these jamokes.
It might not be by accident that
really
there's some masking going on, but I guess we can go ahead and get into Darwin, Africa, and genocide.
By the last decades of the 19th century, Darwin's theory was increasingly popular among Germany's intellectual elite. Darwin had claimed that humans and other mammals were the product of what he called natural selection, a blind struggle for existence where the fittest survived and reproduced, and the less fit died off. In his book, The Descent of Man, Darwin made clear that his idea of natural selection had implications for human society.
Charles Darwin clearly was a social Darwinist. He was not as rabid a social Darwinist as some of his followers later on, but he clearly did believe that Darwinism should be applied to human societies.
Darwin worried that civilized societies were harming humanity by helping the poor, caring for the sick, and otherwise saving those who nature would have killed off. Darwin feared that such humanitarianism could eventually destroy the human race.
Yes, pesky nature. Pesky nature. Yeah, Darwinism is actually the root of eugenics, the way I see it.
And I got some pushback. We'll get later to that because actually some people wrote in and pushed back against it. So that's always good.
Yeah.
That's our ideas are being challenged. But we have to lay it out. In The Descent of Man, this is a quote, Charles Darwin said, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races.
Right. It's right there. It's in black and white. It's in black and white. I saw it too.
And it's a lot of science hinges on Darwinism. And this is why they have to be carefully protective of him and his image. Because when you pull that, like one Jenga brick, the whole thing might fall down.
Right.
This is why I'll say you might have experienced some masking going on. 'Cause I think you said you don't remember the full title of the book that we discussed.
No, in fact, a lot of people. Give us the full title again.
I don't have it right up.
Hold on a second.
Put it again.
Here, I got it here somewhere. Hold on a second. Because that's actually quite critical. Well, we had it was the origin of species. Here we go. I can
surmise it, but I want to make sure we get it exactly right.
The origin of species by means of natural selection or the preservation of favored races in the struggle for life. And it's right there on Wikipedia. Big ass picture, a scan of the original cover page.
Now, some might say we're looking too deep into the word races and it's more scientific. But when you couple that with this statement from The Descent of Man, he's talking about humans and there being different levels of races, or however you want to, subgenres or sub-races, because he distinguishes the civilized races from the savage races. Mm-hmm. So I want to make sure we're being completely, as we always do, unbiased and, objective when we discuss these topics. But as science hinges on this, a large part of racism and the understanding of racism hinges on this same ideology.
Yeah, no kidding.
Out of this comes manifest destiny and, and all the other things that it's our role to exterminate.
It's crazy. and even Dvorak, I said, "Do you know the full title?" He said, "No." He said, "No." And when I told him, he's like, "Huh." Yeah.
Which that show you how well they masked to just chop off a whole whole half of a title, which is very damning when you when you couple that with his other statements. So I guess we can go ahead and we're going to jump to another. That let me just be clear. That's from Discovery Science. It's not from the music you might think is from some YouTube video, but that was actually from Discovery Science. And now we're going to jump over to was Darwin a racist? And this is with Adam Gopnik. Let me just give you a little background on him. He's from the New Yorker, and he wrote a book. Let me see the name of the book. Author of Angels and Ages, a short book about Darwin, Lincoln, and modern life, which Lincoln and Darwin are very tied together in the sense, as we talked about on earlier episode, I forget which one it was, how Lincoln's view that America was a white nation that should be preserved for white people.
Yep.
So all this ties together, and I find it interesting that he tied those two together in his book. But I guess I'm going to clip 2B.
Let's cut to a particular chase here, Steve. It's something I thought we'd talk about later, but since it came up now, and that is Darwin and race you talk about. And you had to sort of put entre guillemets, you had to put in quotes the wild Malay, the Negro. Because obviously Darwin, in thinking about race, spoke a language, had a vocabulary, which is no longer our vocabulary necessarily. It's a vocabulary of an earlier time. And yet one of the most sensitive, tender, difficult, contentious issues in Darwinism and understanding Darwin is Darwin's attitude about race. Because one of the things that comes up again and again, I'm sure you found this as I have in going around the country with this book, is that the claim that Darwin himself was inherently racist is then extrapolated to the claim that Darwinism itself is inherently racist, which is one of the reasons why evolutionary biologists want to get out from under Darwin. And it comes from two directions. It comes both from the direction of the creationist right, to dub it that way, that is, who want to show that there's something anti-universalist about Darwin. And it also comes from the left, who want to show that Darwinism doesn't lead by accident to social Darwinism, to the belief in eugenics and into various ugly kinds of 20th century racism, but that it leads logically into that kind of into eugenics and into the ugliest sides of 20th century history.
Oh man, another book I have to add to my reading list.
So, a few points I want to point out in this clip. One, the vocabulary of an earlier time. Like, right, they're still trying to
Yeah, that's voicing. It was like, well, you know, the Second Amendment, they had muskets back in the day. You mean something like that?
Also, that when you're trying to be protective over an ideology that's based on a person, and they want, like I said, they want to separate Darwin from Darwinism, and his whole, you know what I'm saying, his whole, all his studies, his work, because modern science is based deeply on that. And then you got to listen to the enemies. He has enemies from the left and the right. His enemies from the right are the creationists. Mm-hmm. We want to get rid of Darwin and his theory of creationism. Evolution, because it goes against the biblical teachings or the creation from a God, depending on what group you're talking about. And from the left, they're saying Darwin, when they get woke, they say, well, Darwin's a racist, and this is the root of racism. And they're both right in a way, but he just finds himself in a weird spot right now.
Well, as I'm reading from the Wikipedia, so the term Darwinism actually was coined by Adolphus Huxley.
Huxley.
Yeah, Huxley, Brave New World.
Okay, yeah.
So it's interesting because, they wanted to separate Darwin from Darwinism, but it kind of had already been done. Or he didn't really create it. Let me see.
Yeah, but in the cancel culture, if you hit Darwin yes. with the cancel culture, if you hit Darwin with the cancel canon, then the theory might go down with it. And it's on shaky ground anyway. From my standpoint, my biased standpoint, let me be very clear. Me being a believer that a higher being created me and all the human race, it's a hard sell now to think that we crawled up out of slime. So it's a very,
of course.
The more we understand about humans, right, and the complexity of just a human body and everything that would have to evolve from coming from one organism, and that's, let me be clear, that's a very unscientific take on it, but I'm just telling you how it's kind of fed through popular science and pop culture.
Sure.
So he's on very shaky ground. So they have to be very protective over Mr. Charles Darwin.
Yeah, and
sense. When you start pulling back the layers, it's like, that's where that racist idea comes from or stems from or could have been weaponized. I mean, let's just be, we always like to humanize people. In some cases, it might be people that are actually just using and weaponizing his ideas to push a certain narrative.
Absolutely. And this is so obvious, but so undiscussed. I'm so happy we're doing this.
Yeah, they don't want to really discuss.
No, no,
at all.
With good reason.
Because once again, if you get those left and right enemies to find some common ground, he really could be taken out of commission.
Right.
So I guess we can get into 2C now.
But the first part of it, I do think, is a falsehood in plain English. That is to say that if you look at what Darwin actually says about the question of race, and most notably or notoriously, depending on your point of view, in The Descent of Man, he toys with the idea of race. That is, he takes seriously the idea that the races of man might be separate in the way that the species might first, or that subspecies of any creature might be. And he toys with that idea, and he plays with it. And if you take out those sections of Descent of Man, you can find, in some sense, incriminating passages. But having played with it and having toyed with it, he rejects it. He rejects it quite explicitly.
Stop.
Okay.
See, you hear this dishonesty. Let's go back to the quote. This is the thing. He toys with it. This flowery language.
Good catch. Yeah.
This is bedrock. At some future period, not very distant as measured in centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. I don't know how he defines toys with, but this is pretty much as racist as you can get.
Let's roll that back a little bit here. Hold on a second.
Of any creature might be. And he toys with that idea, and he plays with it. And if you take out those sections...
All right, let me go back a little further. It's better here.
Toys with the idea of race. That is, he takes seriously the idea that the races of man might be separate in the way that the species might first, or that subspecies of any creature might be. And he toys with that idea, and he plays with it. And if you take out those sections of Descent of Man, you can find, in some sense, incriminating passages.
Only if you really study it very closely. Don't read the words as a whole or anything.
Yeah, if you take him on face value, he means exterminate. I mean, you can squint and see it, but
it's really hard to see, really hard.
But having played with it and having toyed with it, he rejects it. He rejects it quite explicitly. Oh. He rejects it on two grounds. One, he rejects it on the ground, it seems to me at least, that there's no evidence for it. That is to say that, so far as you can tell by any rational standard, all human beings belong to a single race. They interbreed, they have all the characteristics of a race. They all have essentially the same mental powers, and they all have essentially the same abilities. He also believes that, that the key human capacity, the key human gift is sympathy. And he talks about that a great deal. He says sympathy has probably evolved for some useful social reason, because it enables a group of Homo sapiens to have a competitive advantage over some other group. They're used to working together. They like each other. They get engaged. But then he says very beautifully, but once you have sympathy, there's nothing to limit your application of it. There's nothing that prevents you from expanding it as you like to whatever social group you choose to.
The sympathy thing.
Yeah.
And the way I see that translating into modern thought, and this is why I say the left can be more racist than the right, because on the right, the people that subscribe to this ideology, to say, oh yeah, you're black, you black people are dumber or whatever, they honestly believe that. And I can respect their honesty, at least, even though they're incorrect, but I can respect their honesty. But the way the left comes at it is, yeah, we know you're dumb, but we have sympathy for you. That's why we need to have these, and then fill in the blank, all these special programs to level the playing field, because they think it's nature. I'm a big believer that it's nurture.
That's really deeply ingrained, what you just said there.
Very, very, very much so.
That's kind of the root of it. Interesting.
Yeah, math is racist. This is the root of math is right. They're so dumb. We need to have more than one right answer to 2 + 2. Yeah. So that's what they lobby for. I don't know if they're conscious of it. I would assume so at some levels. I mean, of course, people get indoctrinated into beliefs, but
okay, I'm just. Do you remember? Do you know what this is interesting? Do you remember the story I told? This was one of our oh shit moments. The story about the black family that visited us, and I was like 6 years old, and we were in Maryland, and they were all dressed up. The boy in a suit, and the girl in a little frock and everything, and like it seemed way overdressed for the occasion, and they were kind of timid. Right. And I told you that, I think we discovered that we were both like fucked up by our parents about what was coming, and they had told us how to behave, and it made no sense for a bunch of kids, right? But I remember specifically looking at them, this is very weird to say, and feeling sorry. And I can't explain why, but I remember that feeling, and I didn't understand it. And now it seems like that was something that was inherently kind of baked into the culture that I was raised in. Not that I don't think any of my family are racist, but that feeling right there, I remember that.
That's the dangers of lower expectations of embracing victimization mentality.
I was 6. I was 6, Mo. I was 6. That was early on.
This system is ingrained in the images that we see through the media, the television roles that we see, the movies. Like it's always some white savior coming to the poor school to save the savage races.
Mind you, this was 1969. Okay, so I'm just to give you some context as to what the world was like back then. So I don't think I got this from my parents per se, but from media, television, everything that I was exposed to at the time.
Right, and this is the problem with the actual. Just take a little sidebar right quick. That
was kind of hard for me to admit, by the way. It's fucked up. How did I feel that
that's way? Just to have another honest moment without closing the door. I mean, is that on the other side, preparing for the show, words, whatever. It's not a huge thought, but it is a thought to say, "Oh, I need to pronounce this right." Because I can be discredited at any moment.
Yeah, sure. I feel you.
That kind of thing. And I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick reveal. This is that different thing. Once people get to know you, you're different. Different from what?
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Like, what was your preconceived notion?
Mo's not your typical black guy.
Right, exactly. He's different. And I know people, but that's them battling the images that were created, and I believe it's systemically done to maintain this system of white supremacy, and you're hearing it through Adam Gopnik.
Yeah,
he's like, we have to protect Darwin, even though we have his words right. No, you don't understand, and that's the other thing that I always say when people say, "Oh, you just don't understand." Oh, it's like, I think I understand quite clearly. Mm-hmm. So, and about affirmative action, I was going to say right quick, this is the issue. When you say that we can perform less and get in, this only feeds that
narrative.
Mm-hmm. Because I experienced it. When you work in corporate America, it's like, oh, how'd you get here? Right. Kind of thing, and it's a whole thing with imposter syndrome. We'll go down that rabbit hole another day, but this is now you're starting to see I'm glad you admitted that, because that just speaks to, and I'm glad I admitted what I said, because it speaks to the
difference is I felt that when I was 6. You felt that maybe this week,
right? But you feel it, but it's not because I feel it. It's because how I could be perceived. And that goes back to the double consciousness of a Negro, that I can see, I know how I feel about it, but I know how others can feel about how I feel about it. So, I mean, it's a huge calculation going on, but let's go ahead and jump on to the next. That's fucking
tiring, Mo. That's tiring to live like that. It's like, I got to always think about, and by the way, I don't know if you have to, but you do. So, you feel like you have to always think about that because XYZ, you'll be perceived incorrect. Maybe you won't, but it doesn't matter. You feel like you have to do that.
It's not that I feel like that's why I say it's not a persistent thought. It crosses your mind, but then you had to stamp it out like, I'm sure of what I'm doing. Right. I know what I'm doing here. But that constant battle, it just has a eroding effect.
That's old programming, really old in embedded programming. Okay.
Now, just to make one more thing, since we're here at this point. Now, imagine you just said how tiring it is. Now, imagine liberal thinking people. They live in that space.
Oh, no wonder they're hysterical.
Crazy. I mean, we can say
no wonder,
because it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
And on both sides, one, if you actually think you live in that, or if you perceive, this would be white liberals perceiving black people living in that space.
I got to tell you another story. This is my stepdaughter, the younger one. And now she's come around a lot. She's been living in New York for, almost 2 years. And she's come around a lot. And I'm very, very proud of her. But she was visiting a year and a half ago, maybe here in the Hill Country. And we were at one of our favorite restaurants. And I know all the wait staff there. And this is one server, black guy. And he it was interesting. He had his baseball cap on, and he had kind of the small dreads. And so I said, "Holy crap, man! He looks just like Snoop Dogg," which he did. He looked like all that was missing was the wraparound sunglasses. Da 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 da. I mean, it was totally
right.
Snoop. And she got up and left the restaurant because she believed 100% that I was just being completely racist, saying there's a black guy, must be Snoop Dogg. And not
acknowledging their familiar appearances. What she heard, and this is the thing about what's being said and what's being heard. And this is going to be I'm glad you brought that up, because that's going to be a sub running theme of this show. Mm-hmm. Are we saying that black people are dumb? All black people? Are we saying there are a higher percentage of dumb people in the black race? You see what I'm saying? Like what you're saying now. You said they look alike, but I'm not put words in her mouth, but it lends to that, all black people look alike to you, Dad.
Now, it was really bizarre, but I guess what I was saying was that she has these had. This has really changed. I'm so proud of her. She had these processes running all the time. Always like trolling. Is there something racist? Is there something racist? Is there something racist? But then the reason why that process is running is perhaps something much differently. It's actually a misplaced compassion. It's really weird. Sympathy, right, exactly. Yeah, the sympathy, right. Yeah.
That's that sympathy that we speak of.
Yeah.
But it's, like I said, it's very tiring. And I think that's the great part of the show, that you can kind of take some of that baggage off on both sides and hey, this is what I see, this is what you see. And we talk about it and it can be put to rest. Yeah. And the producers get to hear that as well.
Yeah. Well,
so let's go.
We've solved this one. Onward.
Right. So now we're going to get into the genocide, the horror of scientific racism.
Darwin also predicted that in the future, the civilized races of mankind would exterminate the inferior ones. Darwin himself was ambivalent about some of the social implications of his theory. But in Germany, Darwin's ideas supplied a new generation of political leaders, social thinkers, and scientists with what they regarded as a biological justification for world domination.
If you read the scientists of the day in the late 19th and early 20th century, many of them were promoting racism and even racial extermination, extinction of races. They were promoting the gaining of living space. They were promoting competition, the things that we know of as social Darwinism. These were things being promoted by Charles Darwin himself to some degree, many other leading biologists.
No, you don't say.
So the one word I want to focus on out of this whole clip is exterminate. Because that's an interesting word to use. Yes. More commonly used with bugs or pests.
Yeah, bugs. Yeah,
right. And just from the Merriam-Webster, it means to destroy completely. And similar words. Let's see. I had the similar words here. Okay, the similar words is abolish, annihilate, blackout, blot out, cancel, clean up.
Yeah.
Eradicate, erase, expunge, liquidate, obliterate, root out, rub out, snuff out, stamp out, sweep away, and wipe out.
Yeah. Sounds groovy, all of it.
But he just toyed with.
He only toyed. Just a little toying around. It's just juvenile stuff.
But just in fairness, people took that idea, and this is how dangerous ideas can be when they're weaponized. The Germans, they took it and ran with it. You anything you want to say before we move on? Or?
Well, no, I should say that the Germans, they took it from the Americans. Hitler in particular was a big fan of some of the American eugenicists, wrote them fan letters even. And then, and then when Germany started going a little hard and heavy, like, in the U.S., people were talking about forced sterilization. In Germany, it was like, hey, you know what? I think gas chambers are good. That's when everyone got really quiet here, the eugenics movement.
Right, because they had to distance themselves.
Yeah, that was we'd already had that conversation in America, and it was like, nah, it's kind of lame. Let's not do that.
Well, but not out of any, benevolent, feelings. It was more of you're gonna blow the scheme
right.
if you keep doing this on Broad Street.
Yeah.
So once again, it's that, we're helping you by sterilizing you. We're helping you by eugenics kind of thing. That sympathy.
Yeah.
They actually think they're doing the right thing, and we have to be clear: these people are lizards.
Yes, 100%.
And thinking with the lizard brain, they're thinking, if we let these savage races continue to procreate, there won't be any space for us. So it's either fight or flight.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to see that through this lens, if only to understand, to counteract it. These people are acting out of fear. It's not power. They act out of fear.
Well, no, they've acted out of fear, and through that they've created huge power structures based on that fear, which in my mind, I'm seeing it so much clearer now, is in fact the pharmaceutical industry, the food industry, and you got the bankers running around taking advantage of it. The whole system of institutions kind of feels like it's set up to remove people from the planet slowly. Slowly. And it's not just one race, it's everybody slowly.
Yeah, they have different criteria, and that's the thing. And but they know who needs to go first. Like I said, it always comes with it, and it's because of the savage race thing. It's like we got to get them out the way first, and then once we get that down to 10%, then we'll do the 10% of the 10%. It won't stop. I mean, they're always continuously improving. So that's the thing. It will never stop with these people until it's only a handful of quote unquote gods on the earth.
500
that's
million.
How they view themselves. 500
million Georgia Guidestones. That's their guiding light.
And I don't think it will stop there. I just think that's the first 10%. It's like, okay, now we got it down to 500 million.
Sure.
Now it needs to be 50 million. And they'll continue on with their process. Let's see, we stopped at
4
number 2. Yeah, okay, let's go there.
The war of annihilation is a natural law, without which the organic world could not continue to exist at all. German zoologist Gustav Jaeger, 1870. Just as in nature, the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution and perfection, so also in world history, the destruction of the weaker nations through the stronger is a postulate of progress. German ethnologist Friedrich Hellwald, 1875. According to Darwin's theory, wars have always been of the greatest importance for the general progress of the human species. The physically weaker, the less intelligent, the morally lower, must give place to the stronger. German biologist Heinrich Ziegler, 1893.
Yeah, they were all over that.
Yeah, so I missed that setup, but that's just quotes from scientists that Darwinism influenced. Mm-hmm. And you can see they just took it to another level. And that you heard them start speaking about intelligence and moral composition as being criteria for eliminating people. So, but there is some downside to eugenics.
No,
okay. in their eyes. I mean, even in the lizard's eyes, because it can, Well, let's go ahead and get into number 5.
Not all German Darwinists defended war as a biological imperative. Some, in fact, criticized it for undermining natural selection. They feared that wars in Europe would kill off too many of the superior races. Yet even these pacifist Darwinists tended to approve of wars waged against races they considered lower on the evolutionary scale, like the native peoples of Africa.
Yeah, or brown people in deserts. We still do that.
Right? Or brown people in, south of the border or wherever. I mean, but you heard him say, well, we're killing off too many of our own. Right. These world wars or whatnot.
Yeah, this is no good. Yeah, we got to keep some of our own people going.
Right, because it's a balance there that you have to increase the civilized races while suppressing the numbers of the savage races. But when you have these world wars, it kind of has an ill effect on the civilized races as well. I'm going to take this as a quick aside and just say what I'm seeing in the world right now. And I just had an epiphany. I was talking to Grunt one day, and we just go back and forth, and it was just like it had, it just popped in my head. Are we, and I say we, the Western ideology, white supremacy, because I live in America, so I'm part of that, loading up on soldiers? Because I keep hearing this meme, military-aged men coming across the border, military-aged men coming across the border, military-aged men flooding into Europe. Are we, and because I pay my taxes to the United States government, are we loading up on soldiers that we sorely miss?
I don't know. That's an interesting thought.
Like, you like that citizenship? You like living in the country?
Well, there is a path for, if you come in illegally, there's a path for you to go to military and to become a citizen. I believe that still exists.
Exactly. And we saw this same thing. We saw mass immigration from Europe. Mm-hmm. Then we saw 2 world wars.
Yes, that's right. That continues. That continues to this day, here and in Europe.
Right. So I just want people to pay attention. Like, why they keep saying obvious?
That. Yeah.
And the term military-aged men. Now, that could be double used as to scare people.
Yeah, as potential terrorists or something of that nature.
Right. But also, in my book, it could be, like a foreshadowing of like, oh, we got soldiers right here. Mm-hmm. How convenient, to protect Europe. And would they fight? That's the question. But like I said, that's another story for another day. When I saw that, I was like, and it kind of rung. Like, I was like, hold on. You have all these extra guys around, and you see what's happening on the global front. With China and Russia and whatever else. Are these bodies for the military? Like I said, I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but this is how sophisticated this one world system is.
It's very possible, Mo. I don't see any evidence of it yet.
Yeah, we'll have to. Like I said, I just want to lay this. When I have these thoughts, it's just too convenient, and don't be how Neely Fuller said. Don't be confused that they're confused. So
right,
blowing the border wide open.
Yeah, they do have a plan. That's for sure.
There's another shoe to drop with that one. But with that said, I think that was number 5. Now we're gonna jump on over. This is a dangerous. Let's see.
Yeah, I got it.
This is a documentary. It's called A Dangerous Idea, The History of Eugenics in America. And this is from the National Constitution Center. And let's go ahead and get into part 1 of it.
My interest in eugenics certainly comes in part from the experience of myself being a refugee from Hitler and being keenly aware of what was done in the name of science and specifically in the name of genetics. But that happened in this country as well, of course, in a certain sense. The Nazis imported it from the United States, which had a flourishing eugenics movement.
At the turn of the 20th century, eugenics was widely accepted in the United States as solid science among the country's top psychologists, scientists, politicians, and social thinkers. During this first Gilded Age, it was the creation of the gene concept itself that ignited what became a powerful eugenics movement.
So one reason that the eugenics movement was so influential at the time was because it provided a scientific solution, or a supposedly scientific solution, to a political problem.
Oh, science. Yes. Science. Believe in the science. Trust the science. It's okay. It's just science.
It's a scientific solution.
I love it.
To a political problem. And it doesn't stop. I mean, we see that even to this day. Eat bugs. That's a scientific solution.
Yes, it is.
To a political problem of homelessness. And this is just how they use their religion of science to justify actions that would be seen as counter to being human. You know, just the human sense of like, you can't kill off people. I mean, you can't put people in gas chambers. You can't sterilize people. You can't give people blankets with smallpox in them. You know, you can't release a bioweapon amongst the masses. You can't release an untested vaccine amongst the masses. It's like, oh, but it's a scientific solution to a political problem.
Yeah.
It's justified. So
isn't that amazing? Yeah.
The American Nazis, man, like every time like people want to say, oh, and it's convenient. And we'll see a little later and show how so maybe.
Have you ever watched Man in the High Castle?
I have not. I've heard you talk about it. I've heard a couple of other people talk about it, but
yeah, it's not about race, but completely about eugenics. The eugenics. It really is. A lot of the show is about eugenics, and you know they've got. I mean, the whole premise of the show is interesting, and I'm like in season 3, but it's just something. If people want to see how it could have turned out after World War II, that's something. It'd be interesting to watch that. It's
what finish that statement. How it could have turned out if
America had not won. If the Germans and the Japanese had beat America.
I think they did.
And that's kind of the point of Man in the High Castle. when you look at it, you're like, wait a minute, did this not happen? Yeah, you're so right.
If it started here, then it's not really Nazi in origin.
No.
I mean, you look at Henry Ford and, you know, the people, of that ilk.
Lindbergh.
How they Rockefeller and all these people. I mean, they were big time, eugenists.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have to look and see who actually won. Now, Germany might have lost the war as a country, but the ideology.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at the
Operation Paperclip. They brought over hundreds of Nazis.
Right.
And
Nazi
installed
NASA.
them.
Nazi
Yeah.
NASA. I mean, it ain't too many letters, all from each other.
Yeah.
So, and I like to put some respect on one of the people that opened my eyes up to this possibility. That's Mae Brussels. Have you ever heard of her before?
No, I have not.
You never heard of Mae
Mae Brussels?
She's like the super OG truther that oftentimes you don't hear women truthers, and I use that term very loosely, but people that aspire to find and seek the truth, not in the pejorative term of truther, but
no, I'd never heard. She was a radio host.
Well, she started out by investigating the JFK.
Oh, right. I'm looking at her Wikipedia right now.
Right. That's what got her into it. And from there, she found this whole Nazi kind of subsystem in the United States government.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, it ain't like podcasts. She was pre-podcast. So it's like she would have to mail you tapes. This is how she would have to get. I mean, so just to put some respect in her name, but this is what opened my eyes to hold on,
shoot, man, I'd never heard of her. How fascinating! And she's like, she should be my OG conspiracy therapist. Well, she's dead now, but yeah,
yeah. But if you go back and you can find it, I mean, it's getting harder to find her stuff, but.
Interesting.
She would sit down and break it down like, oh, this guy came over here and he was connecting the yarn string. And
nice.
And it just kind of opened my eyes like, hold on.
Very
That's
cool.
why I haven't seen a Man in the High Castle, but this predate my belief. Like I said, I've been down many rabbit holes. When I went down that one, I was like, and the ties of Jim Jones, and that's kind of how I got into her, because she's the one that did a lot of investigation on Jim Jones,
right?
And that whole thing that went down there was but yeah, so American Nazis, we had to really look at this and see that a lot of that ideology started here, went over there, got perfected, and then they brought the
right
back here, and we're like, shh. Like, and if you notice in all the movies, like the evil professors or doctors have like German names. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yes.
So, yeah. So I guess we can go ahead and move on to the next clip, number 9.
The wealthiest families in the country provided millions in research funding to scientists in an attempt to prove that social problems were primarily a result of defective genetics. At the prestigious Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory in New York, Harry Laughlin, an animal breeder, directed the eugenics record office. He claimed they could predict who would inherit good or bad traits by using a mathematical formula from Mendel. They were also firm believers in Charles Darwin, who clearly applied his theory of natural selection to human society. Eugenicists saw themselves as agents of evolution, doing their duty to ensure that the fittest Americans survived.
They said, we have to find a way to have people who are more evolved make more babies. We have to find a way to have people who are poor and who have all these diseases and all this bad genetic structure produce less.
Laughlin organized exhibits in communities across the country to educate the public about eugenics. Families underwent detailed physical and mental examinations as they competed to win the prize for the best heredity.
Yes, I've read about this at family fairs that have tests and so the like town fairs.
Right, they'll test you and be like,
And the IQ test as we know it today is a derivative of all this bullshit.
Goggles Curry. I knew I couldn't get through one show.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
You and this time travel, man, it's getting so
I'm sorry. No, I did some jumping ahead. I'm sorry. I did some research a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, so dysgenics, you heard it right there.
Yep.
That's the root of dysgenics that
and dysgenics, to remind everybody, dysgenics is where if you don't do anything, then the dumb, stupid people will breed much faster and take over the world, and basically idiocracy is what we then get.
Right. And they'll eat up all the resources, and you'll have more takers than givers.
Right.
To society, and that, and society will collapse under that weight.
Right.
So the agents of evolution have to come and save us from the dumb people. That is a bold statement. Now on the backside of this clip, just because we're going to refresh people, this is a merging of 2 clips from the last show of, I think it was William Shockley.
Shockley, the transistor guy.
Yeah, because he's the one that brought, the modern term dysgenics in, but you heard that it's the old idea that less dumb people, more smart people. That comes out of, OG eugenics.
Yeah, I found an interview of William Shockley from the early 70s with William F. Buckley Jr., which apparently was, according to Dvorak, was the interview that kind of made the public go, "You're an idiot." But it was unbelievable what he was talking about. He was dead serious about this stuff.
And the question is he an idiot? Don't ask that question yet. Let's listen to what he said so people can hear what he said, and let's talk about it on the other side.
Now let's find out what the controversy is about. Dr. Shockley, please give us the benefit, basically, of what your theory is.
My principal point, Mr. Brown, is not so much a theory of black-white differences, but is summed up in one word, which is the theme of my appearance on your program and my efforts, and the word is dysgenics. And dysgenics means effectively downbreeding, retrogressive evolution. And I fear that this is worst for the black community, and I particularly welcome an opportunity to appear on Black Journal just for these reasons. But now let me say this chart that I held up a moment ago is very important in respect to this question of why I think there may be what proves a basic difference. But I'm going to say that if there were not a basic difference in intellectual capacity in the past, there probably will be a basic difference between black and white intellectual capacity in the future, simply because of the reproduction patterns.
Yeah, when I say idiocracy, I'm referring to the movie.
Right, I know what you meant.
Because that's basically what happens in idiocracy. Is all the idiots multiplied? Or that's
right,
inferred.
and it's the pace thing. It's because it's not only do you have to stop the dumb, you have to influence the intelligent to breed, and they're having a harder time with that. And we might get into that a little later, but it ties into an older show as well. But I'm gonna ask you a question, and then we're gonna take look at things through the lizard lens,
okay,
and just see how the lizards see it. Okay, the question is, what percentage of people are fit to be parents in America?
What percentage of people are fit to
procreate?
Well, I guess you'd have to define fit. I mean, physically able, or
let me use your definition that you say, oh, that's the ideal person to be a parent there.
It feels like a trick question.
It's not. It's really not. I mean, I'm just because my number is probably lower than yours.
Well, see, first of all, I believe that everybody who is a functioning human being is technically fit to be parents. I'd say the problem is we have a large population who has grown up askew, so mainly without a father or a man in the house. So I'll have to put it at 25% then.
Okay, so you're saying 75%. I knew my number would be lower than yours. Mine is 20.
Yeah, okay.
I say about 1 out of every 5 people I encounter, I'll be like, you know what? We need more of them in the world.
Right.
And the reason why I'm doing this, we have to look at this through the lizard lens. When they ask themselves that question and say, okay, we're looking at the society. Let's just use your number. 1 out of every 4 people are fit to be parents. Okay. What do we do with the other 3 out of 4?
Sterilize them. Shoot them to Mars. Get rid of them.
Right. Starve them.
Get them on universal basic income.
Right. Trick them into giving up their fertility in some kind of way.
Yep. Scare
them through global warming and their impact on the planet. You know, but we have to take action because we can't. We're using your percentage, not me, and their thought process to say, okay, we can't let 3 out of 4 procreate.
No.
So what do? We castrate them, i.e., the whole child trans movement.
Oh yeah, that's I completely agree. That's sterilization of weak brothers and sisters who accepted this dumb programming in the first place.
And it's not the child.
No,
it's the parent. It's like if you let
they're
your
the ones
child,
pushing it. Exactly.
Right, which they look at it and say, hold on, if those 2 people created and allowed this to happen to their child, they don't need any more children.
I'm with you that this is the thinking mode. I've thought this ever since we started going down this rabbit hole. That's what I keep coming up with.
And just fast forward that to every scenario that's in the news of, and that's how you look at it. It's like 3 out of 4. Just say if they have, 3 out of 5 or whatever the number is. I mean, the remainder, we have to take action. We can't be inactive. And we tried to educate them. We gave them the internet. We gave them the information age. We gave them billions of dollars, trillions of dollars in free money for education. And this is what we got for our investment. Of course, I'm speaking from the lizard perspective, but this is what we got for our investment. We gave you, in the world's library, we gave you abilities to learn and do anything possible.
Right.
and you want to play Angry Birds and Candy Crush all day, yeah, you got to go.
Yeah.
And the reason why I do this is just to humanize, not even to defend them, but to say, okay, if you see that as your enemy or your combatant, you have to seek first to understand. You have to understand their mentality of, if you're not value adding to society, you have to go. Mm-hmm. And it's very cold and callous, but I believe that's their standpoint.
I think you're right. I think you're right at a high level, and it's a small group of people who drive it, but it's so ingrained in our culture. That's the scary thing.
Because you notice everybody has somebody dumber than them. If you ever notice that, like, look at that dummy. That kind of thing. We have a look downward kind of mentality, so we don't care about what happens to people under us. And that plays right into the lizard's hand as well. So I guess let's go ahead and move to the third part of this clip, number 10.
But eugenicists disagreed on what should be done with people they considered unfit. Some argued that laissez-faire economic policies might be severe enough to eliminate so-called defectives from the gene pool.
Society should not coddle in any way the poor. Don't help them. Don't help them through charity. Don't help them through legislation. You see, if you help them, according to the social Darwinists, you would only enable them to reproduce more of them. Society would be better off if we instituted survival of the fittest. We would get stronger, just as species become stronger when their weakest members die off and their strongest members live on to reproduce.
But it would take decades before this social Darwinian approach would be effective. So many eugenicists considered a quicker solution, one that would eventually be used by the Nazis: euthanasia. Some called for outright execution of the unfit, as well as lethal neglect of newborns they considered defective. But in the end, they agreed that euthanasia would be used at too dear a moral price. Sterilization was the favored alternative. Biologist Harry Laughlin wrote the model law that North Carolina eventually used to sterilize Elaine Riddick.
Okay, we have a famous case here.
Yes. So, as you spoke and said that, euthanasia, we can't do that. It's bad for business. So what can we do? Well, they're already here. So we just got to stop them from procreating and enter sterilization and the legalization of sterilization. But you heard they asked the question themselves, what should be done with the unfit?
Yeah.
Which, if we're honest, just being completely honest, some people may not be the best people to procreate. But on the other hand, that's a slippery slope, because then who starts to set the standards?
Well, that's always going to be the slippery slope, of course.
That's why you can't. Even though I understand the lizards, I get it. You can't start that, because if you start that, then how do you stop it? Where does it go from? Okay, we'll do the people on this certain IQ, and then it becomes, you're not financially ready.
I'll tell you. But it seems obvious to me what they did. Let's systematically kill them with processed food. Mm-hmm. Now it kills everybody except the people in the know. I think that's the path they chose. It's like, okay, we're gonna have all kinds of different quality food, which most people will not eat. That'll make them weak. It's possible that certain viruses, etc., were introduced.
Look at the viruses and who they attack, mm-hmm. and who they're. If you're married in a monogamous relationship, monkeypox is not a real threat to you. AIDS wasn't a real threat to you, other than like blood transfusions or something crazy like that. But Look at the diseases. Look at their behaviors when it came to how they did the old people in rest homes, bringing COOF patients in there.
That was an obvious one. Yeah, no, that was obvious that was a kill shot
of the old and fat.
Yeah.
And they're just going to keep ratcheting it down. But
that's the beautiful thing is you get a population, which in the United States, I think some crazy number, like 46% of all Americans are obese.
Right.
46%. So, and notice what we didn't get with 2 years of COOF. We didn't get anyone saying, here's some things you can do to strengthen your immune system. Here's some very simple things you can take. Here's some simple exercises you can. None of that. Because
all the gyms were closed.
Yes.
Which only so hold on.
Physical health, the churches were closed. So mental health is like everything was geared up to have the weakest die off.
You lock me in my house. Only fast food is essential.
Yeah.
You see, but don't be confused that they're confused. When you start to look at these things and they start to crystallize, it's like, holy crap.
I'm with you.
They are legit trying to take us. When I say us, the general population. Now, if you have willpower, they say, oh, you'll be fine, Mo. Oh, you'll be fine, Adam. You know what to eat or you know to exercise or whatever it is.
Or if you live in Europe, you don't need heating this winter. You don't need any air conditioning. You'll be okay. Just take shorter showers.
Right, but it's just, it's bizarre that they're actually in favor of the people they demonize. Right, because if you look at it, conservative, quote unquote, textbook conservative family, the ones that are prepping and having children in the planned way. We had to go back to that. This plan, the ones that are doing the Planned Parenthood method of planning out, procreation. That's who we want. And they're not going to fall for our tricks, and they'll be fine. Just don't say anything while we eradicate the old, the dumb, and the fat.
Yeah. It's true.
It's very sick.
It's sick, but it's so obvious.
It's very obvious. And now you have to go back and say, who actually won that war? Ideology wise, not military, military wise or whatever else. And you have to say, well, if we taught them and then we beat them, either way we would have won. That's playing both sides of the war. And it's the same enemies as now. It's the same enemies.
Yeah, true.
As now, because look, Germany's on our side, Japan's on our side. How convenient. And now we're battling Russia.
Yeah.
Wow. 11.
In 1927, the Supreme Court upheld Harry Laughlin's model law and ruled 8-1 that the Constitution permitted U.S. citizens to be forcibly sterilized. Congress never passed a federal sterilization law, but it's estimated that by the end of World War II, under state laws, at least 80,000 Americans had been forced to undergo hysterectomies, tubal ligation, vasectomies, and castration.
It was only in 1933, after the Nazis took over, that Germany had any eugenic laws at all. The first law they passed was for the heredity of future generations, and that was their sterilization law. And they modeled it on Laughlin's model law. In fact, they were so grateful to Laughlin for his leadership in this area that they gave him an honorary medical degree from Heidelberg in 1936 for research on purifying the germplasm of the human population.
Laughlin was an enthusiastic supporter of the Third Reich. The Eugenical News, which Laughlin edited, just fawned over Germany and its progressive policies. And in fact, there was a certain envy. Germany is getting too far ahead of us in applying the conclusions of science to the structure of society.
Now, there's something we have to consider with this. Intuitively, you and I are on the same page, but have they ever played out the theory all the way through? Have they ever looked at a microcosm of a community or country and said, okay, let's not kill any of these people. Let's see what happens. Let's see if indeed dysgenics happens. Is there any example of that, or is it just as a given and we're just all in?
It's just sheer numbers. Like we just did the study of like the unofficial study of if 1 out of every 4 people or only one, if 3 out of every 4 people are unfit to procreate, they got to go. We can't run that risk. They're going to overrun us.
Well, and can we, as Adam and Moe, can we run that risk that we have a bunch of blithering idiots running around? That's
why I said we had to take a real look at this and say, but the problem is there some solutions that are still humanizing and honest to say to people, hey, this is what's going to happen. This is what we think. That's why I said, this is why I respect the people that are honest to say, hey, this is what I think. I think you're an idiot. How much would it take for you to give up your fertility rights?
Yeah.
And write that a person, at least me.
Well, at
least they know what they're getting into.
That was Shockley's entire idea. Shockley talked about the sterilization bonus, and he wanted to be a federal government program that you would receive. He had the numbers broken down depending on what you did. But if you got a vasectomy or if you were sterilized, then they would put $30,000 into an escrow account for you, and that would actually take care of your living and compounded interest. And of course, this was the 70s, so it's a different interest scenario. And that would it was like universal base. There you go. Universal basic income if you get sterilized. Goggles. Okay, all right, I got there. All right.
How much are you willing to give up your? Because if you're on the government's teat, you can't be having babies.
Well, right now it's, of course, the opposite is true. Is the government gives you lots of money for your babies, which is part of the welfare issue.
Right. So if they say, hey, we'll give you whatever a mother of 4 gets, not to have children.
Not to have children. What a bonanza. Great idea.
And that's why I see it coming, because it's kind of like one of those situations with every employee needs $15 an hour, right? That was let's do this so we can justify automation and put them out of a job.
Right.
It's the same thing with UBI. It's like, oh, you want to stay at home and find your true self and meaning in the world?
Think about the beautiful scenario. If you have people on UBI, you have a central bank digital currency, so you control where they can spend. You can really control the economy in a very fine-tuned way. You can make sure that if you believe in modern monetary theory, that you can keep printing money forever, which clearly the central banks do. Then you can, then you have your built-in consumers, and you can determine who is successful by steering the consumers based upon access they can or cannot have with the money that you control. Oh, this is kind of a dynamite plan now to think about it.
And this is 2.0 because this is what welfare was about the first time around.
Right.
And No Man in the House. It was, okay, keep the seed spreader away. And we'll give you the apartments were nice when they first built them.
Yes.
They weren't projects right off the bat. Right. It was, okay, we'll give you a nice apartment. We'll give you food stamps, which is basically the same thing. We'll give you money that you're limited how you can spend it. Is that what you're saying with the digital currency? So, you can't buy this. You can't buy hot food. You only can buy, blah, blah, blah. And the thing, if they really want a healthier society, they could make it where your food stamps on EBT card would only work for healthy food. But it's the complete opposite.
Well, even though some of that they tried to implement, but the black market for selling and trading your EBT card for drugs and other things is, you can't. It's hard to combat that in its current form.
No, what I'm saying is trust me. They had a rule where you couldn't buy hot food. Why can't you not buy junk food? Why can't you not buy soda pop? Why can't you not buy Little Debbie and these other things.
Because that's against the corporate interests of the corporation.
No, they want you fat.
Yes.
And die early. That's what that is.
Die. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Because I'm going to tell you how snack cakes are subsidized in some kind of way, and fast food as well. Notice, hamburgers are still $1. Now, we're in rampant inflation. And of course, I know they're probably doing something on the ingredient side, but they make sure fast food is always accessible to the poor, whether in price point and in location.
Yeah.
And that's to get you up out of here as fast as possible.
Yep. I see it. I see it clearly. America's not racist. We just want to kill most people.
And it's not even America. It's the one world government.
It's the one world government, yeah.
I.e. white supremacy by nearly full of the definition.
Mm-hmm.
Because we see with Darwin what they mean by that now. It's like the civilized races. We need to, that's what that's all about. And if you can, even if you're not quote unquote white, if you appeal to that mindset, you're good.
You're good to go.
Yeah. And that's why you won't hear people in the mainstream media speak up against it, because they don't want to lose their spot. They want to lose their credentials or their, their degrees or whatnot.
Right.
That's why they keep silent.
Yep.
All right, so now just to show this.
It's so sick. It's sick. It's sick. I tell you, it's sick.
And just to prove that both sides are being controlled, now we're going to jump over. This is Anthony Cecil Sutton, and he taught economics at California State and was a research fellow at Stanford University. So he's well credentialed. Like from the higher up. So we have to, take his word with some credibility. But he's going to draw the connection between Western corporations and the Nazis.
Once we can agree upon a capitalist communist conspiracy, then we have to study the nature of the power elite and the super rich and the people who have the feeling that they control the planet and that we belong to them and we are used by them to their ends. But this is a type of person who has no national loyalties, who is capable of running large corporations and starting wars, using wars for effecting change and so forth. If you look through history, you can identify these figures and you can identify them today. So to me, all of that makes sense.
Now, wait, who was this speaking?
Oh, this is the interviewer. She did like this preamble before he started to speak.
Okay,
and she's just saying how she saw his work and how it was to be described. So I should have explained that a little bit better. But basically, they own you. And I had to be honest. One of the first appealing things, and it was slightly, I don't want to use the word triggering, but it kind of raised my antennas. When I first listened to No Agenda, when you got to the "Shut Up, Slave" segment, because of the programming, the racial programming, it's like "Shut up, slave," like slave.
Well, we consider everyone to be a slave of Gitmo Nation.
That was what was appealing about it. But I'm just showing you, hearing something, then processing and realizing, oh, you all get it. Yeah, we're all slaves.
Yes, yes.
Well, that's the charm about it. One of the many charms about the show is that, that and the lizard people. Like I said, you have me. Hey, we're good to go.
I hooked you and reeled you in, didn't I? I got you good.
You got me. You know what I'm saying? Like, because they own us. Now, is that no forever? No, but we're complicit in our own ownership because we give these corporations our money and then they give us back these programs.
Yeah.
Now, of course, me and you could live a great life. One, if we push their narrative or embraced it, or even just shut up. It's like
just shut up. Yeah, just shut up and go along with the program. You can be very successul that way.
You're good. I mean, because look, you're intelligent. You don't have any skin in the game.
I remember going back to the Netherlands end of 1999, and I had taken a company public. I clearly had done well, And very quickly, I was invited into the elite parties, with politicians and people who are big in industry, and it was like weird stuff like fashion shows, etc. And I noticed that they were all kind of like, "Hey, this is a hot new dude. Let's see what's he got going on. How can we use him?" And they quickly found out that I was not to be manipulated, and I really was not interested. And I got kicked out of every group. Uninvited, never happened again. So
you're the most dangerous.
Yes, yes.
Because if you understand it and don't go along with it, and this goes back to that 5-10-85 thing, that they think 85% of the people are sheep, right? And it's in 5%ers believe it's a belief system that was from popularized by Wu-Tang Clan, but I mean it existed way before them. And it's basically 85% of the people are sheep. 10% of the people know what's going on, but they exploit the sheep. Yeah. But then 5% of the people know what's going on, and they seek to help the 85 to see what's going on.
Right.
Like they tried to get you in the 10, which another term for the boule is the talented 10th. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. The talented 10, that's what they're called?
Talented 10th.
Talented 10th.
So the top 10%, yes.
I'd never heard of that.
Yeah, so that was the one, and this is where that thing comes in to say, oh, they're not all dumb. Some are different.
Yeah.
So then that's when they come in and start to get you in the gifted programs and route you out away from the trick baby thing, right?
Right.
We can't just let them be free agents out here. We got to rope them in. And I think you were kind of going through that same process of, oh, you're very influential. We need to have you on our team. Oh, you don't want to be on our team? Oh, you get that Alex Jones treatment then.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Alex Jones seeing what that bottom is feeling like, baby. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, hell yeah.
Because you can't, now that we know that you know, it's kind of like the bank robber, like, right? It's like, once you see my face, I got to kill you now. You know? So... yeah, it's wild.
It is. It is. When you see it so clearly, it really is.
I think when we come and laugh about it and mock it, it helps.
Well, but also what's really interesting is how it really is covered up by this universal racism thing.
Right.
So the cover up is, all white Trump voters are the problem in America. They're the racists. They're super racist. They're uber racist. They're not even worth talking about. They're so racist.
And listen how the conversation goes. And this is a demographic they started using. I don't know how recent it was. You would know better than me because you cover like the political news in very detail. But this what do they call it? Non-college educated voter.
Yeah. That really
that started being a demographic,
that really ratcheted up with Trump. I mean, it's always been there. It's been there. I remember it from Bush years. Actually, during Obama, it probably really started to ramp up. You didn't vote for Obama? Racist. You don't like Obama? Right. Racist. Birther? Racist.
And you know why though? Because they haven't been to college.
Yes.
That's a clear indicator. So I'm just showing you how they put it right out on Front Street in front of your face when they use these demographics like, college educated voters. And this is where in the 2020 election, a pressure was applied to the moderates to say, you don't want to be like those dumb Trump voters, do you?
Oh, no.
Those troglodytes, that kind of like that kind of thing is like, whoa, like that accelerated fast. Neanderthals. I mean, they were throwing all the big words around, during that whole time. So they're right on Front Street with it. So now we get to Mr. Anthony Sutton and the next clip, part 2.
So you have just made a rather shocking statement, and that statement is that American or international capitalists, as I call them because they don't have any American loyalties, would prefer to have socialist and communist captive states so that they can have captive markets.
Yes, these people are not American. They're internationalists, and they're proud of being internationalists in their private conversations. And you just gave a quotation, which I found in the State Department files, from William Saunders, chairman of Ingersoll Rand, saying he thinks that Soviet communism is the best form of government, the best form of government for the Soviet Union. When you talk to these gentlemen, there's no question that they want power. And power in the political sense equates to socialism. Whether you call it National Socialism or Bolshevik socialism doesn't really matter. When you get centralized power, centralized political control, that is what these internationalist gentlemen want. They do not believe, as I've seen them, in the American way, the Constitution of the United States. They don't believe in personal liberty for you and I. And I was talking to a gentleman today who had worked in one of these corporate structures, and he remarked how it was just like a little socialist state where people are numbered, they perform numbered actions, they're little cogs in the wheel. That is what these gentlemen want.
Oh yeah, the dream.
Right.
That's what the metaverse is going to be.
And just to give you some personal perspective about this, that I've gone through this after leaving corporate America. When I went to work in corporate America, I dressed nice, right? I mean, because I had to go to work, and I'm a nice dresser, naturally.
Wow, that's really presumptuous, you racist.
No, what I mean is I'm even amongst my peers, I like to look nice. So, but I would come from work and people would see you differently. Now that I'm doing my new business,
right? You're not dressed up the way you used to be.
Wearing shorts, t-shirt, what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. They look at you differently, and it's just jarring, right? Kind of like they look past you. It doesn't bother me, but of course I take notice to everything.
Now, when you say they, obviously it's not the same people you were interacting with before because you left the corporation. Do you mean
I'm talking about outside of work? Like when I'm going, if I was going home from work and I stopped by the store. See, that was that different appearance. Oh,
you're different.
You dress nice. You're so presentable. I'll speak to you.
Wait. Wasn't it Joe Biden who said about Barack Obama that he was
clean,
well-spoken, clean? I don't remember him saying clean, but
I think he said clean.
You might be right. Let me see. If it
was one of the ones on the left that said he was clean, it might not have been Joe Biden, but that was one of the attributes linked to Obama. But yeah, it was. Are you looking it up?
Yeah, I was trying to see if I had a clip of that. I don't think so. I don't think.
But he did speak to his being different. This is
yes.
Agree to that point that Barack Obama was different in some way. So I'm just stating that just how society we all have this looking down mentality, right? We're looking for somebody to look down on to feel better, which plays great into the hand of what they're trying to do in the grand scheme.
Everything.
Right. It could be narcissism, whatever else, how you want to call it. So, all right, let's see. I think we stopped at 13. Let's go to 14.
They also supported Hitler, the very same people. So they support the left, they support the right. So you go back to the Hegelian dialectic, thesis versus antithesis gives you a synthesis. If they want a synthesis of New World Order, they will get conflict. Conflict between apparent left, apparent right. There might be another reason that the capitalists want captive markets. They don't want to see the Soviet Union as another free enterprise, free society. And this is still the freest society in the world, in the United States. So they doom these countries, whether it be the Soviet Union in 1917 or Nicaragua today, they doom these countries to Marxist dictatorship so that they can be controlled from the economic and the political and financial viewpoint through what I see as the coming New World Order, the secular New World Order. So there may be a combination of reasons, and there's a deliberate creation of conflict to bring this about.
Oh man, we're well on our way.
Oh yeah, we're
deep. Maybe
on the right road and headed there fast.
That's right, fast track.
But just to go back to the Obama statement, it's a story on CNN. Biden's description of Obama draws scrutiny. Biden called Obama first clean African American candidate.
What a dope.
which I think it plays even more to him using Poor Joe. At this point, I got to call him Poor Joe. In the scheme that he's running with the third term, it's like, yeah, clean, huh?
Yeah, right.
Well spoken, you know.
Yeah. Talk for me, Joe. Talk for me.
Right.
Dance, monkey boy.
So you hear what? We had it on the right road, and I just played those set of clips to show, even in this eugenics, whatever else, I think they're playing both sides. And one of the things I want people to be cautious of, now that Roe v. Wade has been stricken down as unconstitutional, I have a question. Can sterilization be made legal on the state level?
Forced sterilization or just sterilization?
Sterilization.
Yes.
And you have no recourse. You see what I'm saying? Because well, we don't hear Roe. If Roe is not meant to be
right, well, I mean, sterilization, of course, there's no unborn child involved, only future unborn children that will not happen.
Which I think would be a lower hurdle.
A lower hurdle for what?
To get to pass.
But I don't see. I don't think you need to make it legal. It's legal as is. It's not an illegal procedure. It's encouraged, obviously. Maybe I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
But there'll be some pushback. Say, they're sterilizing, they're like the Nazis. And it's like, no, we can legally do it. You know, that kind of argument. The same thing, but just in reverse with Roe versus Wade.
But you're talking about forced sterilization then. Because voluntary.
I don't want to use force.
No, but you can voluntarily kill yourself in most states. It's not
coerced. Let's say coerced.
Yes,
like UBI. Let's just use the UBI thing.
Well, yes, I completely believe that can be deemed legal.
And the one roadblock has been removed out of the way.
Now it depends. I think. Well, I don't know. I don't know if that really removes the roadblock. I'm not sure. The
reason why I'm saying, let me explain my point a little bit clearer.
Sure.
If you move Roe out the way to say, hey, the Supreme Court can't legislate on whether it's a constitutional right to have a child or not have a child, we're kicking it back down to the states. Now the states can say, hey, we'll offer up money to get you sterilized, and I don't think that could really make it back to the Supreme Court under the same. Now, it could be brought there, I think, but I don't think they were ruling the same way.
I don't even think it'll be controversial. If states introduce that, I think people would be, oh, this is great. There would be no controversy. People who, no, I think
that's even scary.
I'm telling you, I think it would be like, oh, this is fantastic. I want a family. Let all those dumb effers, let them take the money and be sterile. Whatever. Enjoy that. No,
free donuts and free French fries, like the vaccine. I got sterilized.
I think it is a natural progression of the plan, and I don't see why there would be any pushback at all.
Wow, you have more. I'll at least think there will be some pushback. I've been thinking about
this. I've been thinking about this for a couple of weeks. You really started me up on this, and I'm like, yeah, I can. If people take. It was okay to give people a damn burger and fries to get a death shot, a heart dart.
Free Krispy Kremes.
Yes.
A Krispy Kreme donut is like 700 calories for one.
Even better example. Yeah, so that was celebrated. Come on, that was celebrated. That was great.
I'm doing it for climate. I'm doing it for the climate.
No, there's another reason people will be happy to do it.
I think that would be the biggest reason.
It's the virtue reason. Signal. Yeah, it's the reason. Absolutely. Already, I mean, there was I think it was on, it might have been PBS. They were interviewing young women who were either had been sterilized or had scheduled to be sterilized because of climate change. And there's no controversy over it.
And now it becomes a feature of the vaccine. It's a feature now. It's like, get a twofer. It's
right.
beat COVID and get sterilized. It's a bundle.
Except you don't get any UBI. You don't get any money. So that's kind of a jip. We got to, people are going to catch on. Wait a minute. I need to get compensated. I think it's in the cards, Mo. I'm certain of it. And it's funny because that's the Shockley theory that people were so outraged by in 1974.
And this as his last point is that the outrage because he's saying, as they say, the quiet part out loud. Not that it's a crazy idea. It was like, shh, your head on the script, like, hold on, like, shut up.
He didn't, what? He didn't have climate change. That's the difference. He had Dysgenics. He didn't have climate change. If you got climate change, you can sell it.
Okay. All right. So I guess let's just jump a little bit ahead and let's go ahead and go to America's campaign to create a master race.
But now there's a resurgence of the same impulse that caused eugenics in the first place. I'm speaking of newgenics. And this time, it will not be racial dogma and national flags. This time it will be globalization, profit, bottom line, corporate activity that determines who is fit and who is not fit to continue their existence. And legislators are seeing this as the new threat of discrimination in the 21st century. And anti-genetic legislation is already embraced by nations all over the world. And this legislation is in our Congress now, shortly after I speak. The first vote is going to take place in the Senate to adopt anti-genetic discrimination laws to stop gene lining. We all remember what redlining was. Now it will be gene lining. And so as we go into the dazzling 21st century of genetic genies, we hope that as many miracles as possible come our way, but we also ask that Wall Street and these corporations and our society look over their shoulder and make sure that genetics does not return from whence it came.
Yeah, look those laws up, actually. Mm-hmm. The genetic discrimination law. It's called GINA, I think, GINA.
What'd you find?
There's loopholes. There's loopholes.
As any well-written law.
Yeah. I'll put some in the show notes so everyone can take a look at it.
It's like the rubber sealskin thing, man. You like fold it up where you can find a loophole to get out the deal.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing, just to let people know, that was a throwback clip from the last show.
Yes.
Show 84. I think I put 85 on the thing, but yeah. So I think the biggest test is going to be the IQ test. I really think they're going to draw the line based off of intelligence. The only problem with that, now you can take your goggles off, is the flawed science.
Yes.
And the origins of the IQ test.
Yeah. Is this 15? Because it's a really good story.
Yes. Let's go ahead and jump into 15.
In 1905, psychologists Alfred Binet and Theodore Simon designed a test for children who were struggling in school in France. Designed to determine which children required individualized attention, their method formed the basis of the IQ test. Beginning in the late 19th century, researchers hypothesized that cognitive abilities like verbal reasoning, working memory, and visual spatial skills reflected an underlying general intelligence, or G factor. Simon and Binet designed a battery of tests to measure each of these abilities and combine the results into a single score. Questions were adjusted for each age group, and a child's score reflected how they performed relative to others their age. Dividing someone's score by their age and multiplying the result by 100 yielded the intelligence quotient, or IQ.
Yes, dynamite. This is really good.
So for the people listening at home, the way they calculate this score, and I want to be clear that we're on the same page. they take your score, divide it by your age, and then multiply it by 100.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you get your score. So let's say if you were, let's rewind that back a little bit again. So I want people to hear it, how he explains it.
Okay.
After my
G
explanation.
factor. Simone and Binet designed a battery of tests to measure each of these abilities and combine the results into a single score. Questions were adjusted for each age group, and a child's score reflected how they performed relative to others their age.
Right. Now to go back further, was it before this?
No, you're good. You're good.
Dividing someone's score by their age and multiplying the result by 100 yielded the intelligence quotient, or IQ.
Right. Dividing by age times 100.
Right. So that bottom age is very, I want to say questionable, but so say a child is 4 and it performs as an 8-year-old, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you can have a IQ, just say an IQ of 200, right? But if you get tested later, that means you had to go higher. Say you don't get tested until you're 6. Now you have to perform as a 12-year-old.
Right.
If I'm understanding the math equation correctly. So could early, now this is a question more than anything, and please, if anybody has more information on the IQ test, explain it to me if I'm wrong. But does testing the child earlier give the child an advantage than waiting later?
See, to me, the history I heard of the IQ test, and this is the Simone Binet scale, but it's about the questions. And the questions were ones that they used at Rikers Island,
Ellis Island.
Ellis Island, sorry, Rikers, Ellis Island. But they were questions, but they were kind of rigged. Yeah, right. They were kind of rigged questions, like stuff that was cultural things, like who's what team won the World Series. Someone who's an immigrant coming in, of course, had no idea even what the World Series was, perhaps. So it always comes down to the questions.
Like what's a salad fork? What's a soup spoon? Those kind of things.
Right.
That culture will have a greater influence. I'm speaking more, and that's you're totally right, because the history of it is troubling to say the least. But I'm speaking to the modern test. If you start testing children earlier, and now I'm just asking a question, but I mean, when you look at numbers, would that give an advantage if you test? Because you have a lower. So if you were 4, then you had to test like an 8-year-old to have an IQ score of 200.
No, I understand.
6, you had to be 12.
I understand what you're saying. I don't know how that works in practice. I can see how it's the whole thing is screwed. Makes no sense.
And so much is based off of it, because I don't even think I don't remember. Maybe Moe Factz can tell me if I ever had an IQ test. But have you had one?
No. The only test.
So how do they place us? I mean,
well, isn't that the SAT? Isn't SAT one version of it?
I know it's a standardized test.
Early
but I don't
aptitude.
know if it's.
I'm sure it's all rolled into Common Core. I'm sure it's being extrapolated from our current curriculum somehow.
Now, we did take the California Achievement Test coming up in school. That was the standardized test of the time. Kind of like the EOCs now. But I'm just saying, a straight up IQ test, because it so much hinges on it, you would think one of the two of us should have had it, to say, is this person.
Yeah, but we're different, Mo. We're not like everybody else.
Right. Don't give them the IQ test. They might get access to places they don't need to be. But I just want to ask that question about the age, because that was more of a question than a statement, because it seems like if the younger, because we're talking about these elite daycares, private schools, a lot of that hinges off of the IQ test. Right. So now we're saying if you haven't had that test, even access to the test, those doors might not be open to you.
It's totally possible. I just don't know enough about it.
Okay, so I just wanted to see if you knew that, and if anybody else knows. I would like to learn more. I couldn't find an answer to that, but I just wanted to bring that up because so much like I said, so much hinges on it. Especially, I don't think for our age groups, but like younger, everything's about testing.
Right. I think that's the point. I think the IQ results are built into. Dude, I've been talking to our teacher friend who teaches high school in Austin, known as the liberal high school teacher. There's all this shit that because I'm like, I was actually talking about this very topic. So can you discuss eugenics in your class versus, when it comes to Darwinism and how it fits into civics? And she said, I can't even do that because my colleagues would ask me if I feel comfortable rewriting history, which is interesting. And also she said, it's really not a part, they have all of these. Then she started to show me how you have to teach. It's called in Texas, the TEKS, the Texas Educational Knowledge Standard. And that's what they're tested on. So I think it's inherent into the testing and into the reporting results, which, as we know, have constantly been skewed to keep dumb, undereducated kids looking like geniuses and passing to the next grade. They just lowered the standards. So I think that's the whole educational system has become one big IQ test.
And if you're speaking on generalized, standardized tests, the SAT.
Yeah.
When I was coming up, like I remember kids after school would go to the lunchroom, the one parent who could afford it, and get the SAT prep.
Yeah.
And they would basically teach them how to take the test. Now, I didn't have that when I took it. I did very well on the SAT, but just like being able, like that's where like the money, like having
access
means can actually control the doors that are open for you.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess we stopped at 15. Let's go ahead and jump to 16.
Today, a score of 100 represents the average of a sample population, with 68% of the population scoring within 15 points of 100. Simone and Binet thought the skills their test assessed would reflect general intelligence. But both then and now, there's no single agreed-upon definition of general intelligence. And that left the door open for people to use the test in service of their own preconceived assumptions about intelligence. What started as a way to identify those who needed academic help quickly became used to sort people in other ways, often in service of deeply flawed ideologies. One of the first large-scale implementations occurred in the United States during World War I, when the military used an IQ test to sort recruits and screen them for officer training.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Good. You go to the trenches, you stay in the tent.
Right, and that's kind of like what the ASVAB is, too. It's like, who can we send to the front? Oh, all the low scores to the front. It's amazing how much is based off of testing, but this is, I wanted to touch on again, this is sorting people. That lens go back to the Boule thing. This is how they create the Boule. They start testing kids at, 4 or 5 years old. You get on the academically gifted track. Then you get on the AP track. Then you get on, they're fit for Ivy League. And it goes from there.
Rhodes Scholar.
Rhodes Scholar. I mean, yeah, you just keep going up the ladder. And those people their whole identity hinges on, the system. Let's just call it that. So they're not going to combat the system. That's why they play along right with it. And that's why the Boule is quite not only ineffective, but it's a detriment to who they're supposed to represent. But they embrace that. Oh, you're different. That's why they always like lead off with these long titles like Dr. So-and-so, da-da-da-da-da, and then followed up with like 19 letters.
The Honorable.
Yeah. And I'm not trying to diminish anybody's achievements, but when you become a prisoner of your achievements, and you've seen this with doctors, like they would quietly say, we know this is not right.
Right. Yeah.
But they're so scared to lose their place in society that they go right along with it.
It's capture.
but they've been groomed, if I can still say that word, they've been groomed to think they're elite from an early age. You know, you don't have people like do well in 11th, 12th grade and become doctors. And I mean, that's like, it's possible, but it's highly unlikely. You had to be on a track. I mean, you look at some of the presidential candidates and politicians, they were put on that track way early on. Mm-hmm. They tried to get Moe, but now I was like, I'm good. I'm serious, because my brother was on the academically gifted track. And they tested me, but when I went in that room, I was like, this is weird.
Wait.
Like,
So
they had a weird vibe.
What did they test you? Like an IQ test?
I guess so. I mean, I don't know if it was per se an IQ test, but it was, I was performing very well in my Gen Pop. So they wanted to bring me over, and it was like, when I got in there, I remember it was 4th grade. I was in Miss Fushi's class, and they were like, oh, we want to, they came and got me out of class. I felt all special, but then I got in the room and I was like, this is weird. I mean, it was weird to me. I mean, even at a young age. So I tanked on purpose.
No, you did not.
I did. I'm serious.
You tanked it on purpose?
Yes.
And you were how old?
I was in 4th grade.
Oh, that's some foresight, brother. Hey, is that Rocco? Is Rocco freaking out on you over there?
Can you hear him?
Yeah, a little bit in the back. I don't mind. It's okay. I don't care.
Yeah, that's him. But and I told the story before, but then I won like 7th grade. What was it? 7th grade treasurer for the school, and they're like, "Oh, you're gonna be a future freedom rider." And they put us on like a bus.
Right. They wanted you to get on the bus and do the mock freedom ride. Oh, yeah, that's right. No, they did try to get you. You're right.
Yeah. I've had a couple of near brushes with the Boule recruitment. But
we're glad you survived all that.
I just didn't, it felt weird. I mean, that's all I can tell you. I'm not like I had like serious insight.
God had a different plan for you. Clearly.
Oh yeah, he did. He said you're going to be a podcaster one day. So you can't.
No freedom rider for you podcasters, the future. That's right.
All right. 19.
At that time, many people believed in eugenics, the idea that desirable and undesirable genetic traits could and should be controlled in humans through selective breeding. There were many problems with this line of thinking, among them the idea that intelligence was not only fixed and inherited, but also linked to a person's race. Under the influence of eugenics, scientists used the results of the military initiative to make erroneous claims that certain racial groups were intellectually superior to others. Without taking into account that many of the recruits tested were new immigrants to the United States who lacked formal education or English language exposure, they created an erroneous intelligence hierarchy of ethnic groups. The intersection of eugenics and IQ testing influenced not only science, but policy as well.
Yeah, exactly. This is 17, by the way, not 19.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
And this is the root of white supremacy.
Yes.
This is, and you see it's tied closely to Darwinism and evolution. Like this, when you start trying to get that pit out, the whole thing could collapse. And this is why they don't want to talk about it. This is exactly why they don't want to talk about it, because now it's like, okay, if the IQ doesn't work, then what do we use? And the test still biased to this day.
But I think they're beyond that. I mean, to me, and when I say they, it's the lizard people. It's the 800-900 people who probably run the world. I think they're beyond it. They're just like, okay, we're going to put this stuff in place. This will reduce the population. People in the know or people who have just figured it out will survive. And they'll survive because they will do certain things, won't do other things. But they're making it increasingly difficult for everybody, particularly food and energy. And I think I think they're being non-discriminatory now. I don't think they just move beyond it.
Well, hold on. I had to push back on that because I think it is very discriminatory, because if you're born into the right families, you're going to be all right. I mean, you could be dumb as a rock. You could.
No, I agree.
For instance, say smoke Parmesan cheese, and you're going to be all right. Some country's going to give you millions of dollars. So
right, but so you don't need to test. You just need to make sure someone's from the right family. You just need to look at you don't need to test. You just need to go to the right college. You need to be in the right sorority or fraternity.
Well, they also have to leave the door open for the quote unquote different ones. You know, and I think we talked about it on the last show with the SAT, or maybe we didn't. But they have this way now of looking at your zip code, and they kind of grade you on a curve. So it's like, okay, you made this. Let's throw a fictitious number out here. You made a 1,200, but coming from where you come from,
right? You get an extra 100,
right? Yeah. Because of. But that's the kind of people they look for, because it's like,
okay, yeah, I'll buy that.
If they overachieved in those environments, that's the kind of person we need.
Okay,
so they always got to keep that door open for upward mobility. But if you're born, you're not going to go down if you're born in the right family.
It's no longer culling; it's making sure you pick the cherries out.
Yes.
Okay, I'm with you on that.
All right, so let's go ahead and go to 18.
In 1924, the state of Virginia created policy allowing for the forced sterilization of people with low IQ scores, a decision the United States Supreme Court upheld. In Nazi Germany, the government authorized the murder of children based on low IQ. Following the Holocaust and the Civil Rights Movement, the discriminatory uses of IQ tests were challenged on both moral and scientific grounds. Scientists began to gather evidence of environmental impacts on IQ. For example, as IQ tests were periodically recalibrated over the 20th century, new generations scored consistently higher on old tests than each previous generation. This phenomenon, known as the Flynn effect, happened much too fast to be caused by inherited evolutionary traits. Instead, the cause was likely environmental: improved education, better healthcare, and better nutrition.
The Flynn effect? Is that what that was called? The Flynn effect?
The Flynn effect. So over time, in general, all scores go up. Now, could that be, like I said, due to better education or
easier questions?
Yeah, easier questions. I mean, I would think it could possibly be just like increased intelligence. I mean, we all learn more, but I think the quality of education is the real issue, because, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but there's a gap that's existed and it stays the same even though both are on an upward trajectory, right? You know, the space between the two lines stay the same. So,
right.
And another point I want to just bring in there is nature versus nurture and nutrition, because this is a big,
nutrition. Nutrition is not even brought into the equation, I don't think, whereas we know how important it is.
Very important. I mean, not only what you eat, but when you eat. That was kind of the whole thing about the breakfast program, so kids don't go to school hungry. Mm-hmm. So they can, get a good start off to their day. But even then, they have these programs, but the bus gets there too. This is something I witnessed with my own eyes, that the bus gets there too late, where the kids can't make it down to the cafeteria and eat, or it's just some slop. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So nature versus nurture is a big thing here, which the Darwinists think is majority nature. It's not, it's hard coded, I think we spoke about like computers, is everybody born with the same specs, or is it like you're a down rev? It's like, okay, you just don't have the hard drive and RAM, you understand, that can do these computations.
You're a Chromebook, sorry.
Right. And that's how they look at it. Yeah. It's crazy, but that's exactly how they look at it. So I guess now we can go and get into number 19. I got a little ahead of myself. And this is going to talk about the testing more.
In the mid-20th century, psychologists also attempted to use IQ tests to evaluate things other than general intelligence, particularly schizophrenia, depression, and other psychiatric conditions. These diagnoses relied in part on the clinical judgment of the evaluators and used a subset of the tests used to determine IQ. A practice later research found does not yield clinically useful information. Today, IQ tests employ many similar design elements and types of questions as the early tests, though we have better techniques for identifying potential bias in the test. They're no longer used to diagnose psychiatric conditions, but a similarly problematic practice using subtest scores is still sometimes used to diagnose learning disabilities, against the advice of many experts. Psychologists around the world still use IQ tests to identify intellectual disability, and the results can be used to determine appropriate educational support, job training, and assisted living. IQ test results have been used to justify horrific policies and scientifically baseless ideologies. That doesn't mean the test itself is worthless. In fact, it does a good job of measuring the reasoning and problem-solving skills it sets out to. But that isn't the same thing as measuring a person's potential.
Yeah, again, the more I hear this, the more I'm convinced that they've just built all this shit right into their standardized testing. Lord knows where the results go. I mean, it's all online. It's all back to Department of Education. I think this is, this is the basis. This is what it is how it's used, but it's probably just built into the system now. For what you call the picking the cherries out. It's like, hey, this one's doing good.
Well, that's that No Child Left Behind. They tell you in the policies.
They do.
No Child Left Behind. It's like, okay, we're going to take the smartest kids out of the quote unquote, and this is their term, dumbest schools, and move them along. Mm-hmm. And just one more thing before we, wrap up the segment is that here's another problem. When you tie money to testing, this is a real occurrence. Parents coaching their kids to perform poorly so they can get the monetary gains that come along with having learning disabilities.
This is a real thing.
This is a very real thing because, and if you think about it, if you're in object property, and you can get another $700,000 because your son has to sit in a different class. The short-term thinking is like, okay, I can use that. Another one of these falsely deals like No Man in the House. It's the same thing.
Yeah. What programs are delivering that though? If your child is special because they're behind.
Right. When you have a learning disability, you can get a check. And this is a term like get a check. That's what they call it, like get a check. So if you have a learning disability, I think it's like SSI or Social Security or somebody cuts you a check for your child having a learning disability.
I don't know anything about this.
Yes. So when you ask a poor person, I see your son, and they'll frame it in a way, I see he's performing a little behind, and like I said, it's not the majority, but it is a real occurrence. Because I've seen it and heard it discussed that parents coach their kids to perform poorly.
Wow.
Or inadvertently sabotage them so they can get more money. And that just lends more to what the UBI conversation.
Totally.
You'd be surprised what people will do for money when they're in a pinch.
A tight spot. Yeah. Especially if it's made available.
This gave birth to a term called the alphabet kids because the kids would have like because my mom was a social worker. She's a therapist now. But you have BEH, LD, that's learning disability, AD, that's what AD, hyperactive, ADHD, AD, you see all these things. If your child is associated with that, there is money that's tied to that. As well as pills.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, the pills are, it kind of goes hand in hand. We'll give you some money, but you got to put them on the pills too.
So like the parents like, okay, and this a poor parent, one of those unfit parents that we talked about, they say, hold on. So you're going to give me something to calm him down? and you gonna give me a check?
Right.
Boy, you go in here and make a good score on this test, I'll bust your head out. That's you laughing, and I'm sad to say it.
Yeah, but I believe you.
This is a real thing, but nobody thinks about the long term. Where does that child end up at 18 years old with a legal drug habit and no skills?
Yeah, that's exactly what happens.
So, all right, so I guess we can thank some people for making this show happen.
Yes, let's revisit what we're all about.
First, the white man and the black man have to be able to sit down at the same table. The white man has to feel free to speak his mind without hurting the feelings of that Negro. And the so-called Negro has to feel free to speak his mind without hurting the feelings of the white man. Then they can bring the issues that are under the rug out on top of the table and take an intelligent approach to get the problem solved. That's the only way that they'll ever do it.
And I think we've done just that during this episode. Some real open honesty. Love that. It is Moe Factz with Adam Curry, episode 85. Value for value is the only way that this comes to you. And let me just revisit, because you have to understand this is now the new international lifestyle, living value for value. People are seeing how well it works. What you do is you hear this, you consume this, you take it in, it has value to you or not. If you're still listening at this point, 2 hours in, you've got to, and you see no value, you've got to question what you're doing with your time. However, whatever the value is that you get from it, all you have to do, and only you can determine that, is send it back to us in some monetary form. There's a couple different ways to do it. We have our Podcasting 2.0 boostergrams. We'll thank those people in a moment. But first, we have our Fiat Fund coupons, people who went to mofundme.com or just to the donation page at mofactz.com, who have helped us out mainly through Cash App and PayPal. And we start off with our big baller.
Shot caller, 20-inch blades on the Impala.
Grant G comes in with $199.99 and says, appreciate the work. Ballers be ballin'. I guess Grant already knew that he was gonna be the big baller. Keep it up.
He must be your cousin from the future.
By the way, it's creative design versus everyone else. I'm not sure I understand the context.
He's talking about, I think, evolution versus...
Oh, okay, right, got it.
Yeah.
I could share my personal beliefs, but this is not the forum. Work on, stay strong. Well, thank you very much, Grant G. We appreciate that. Judy Schwartz, 185 today from Judy, says thank you both, and we both thank you. Jose Retana, $100, and he says standing ovation for episode 84. Thank you, Mo and Adam. And thank you. We have Amy M with 85, and this is a show club donation from Dame Slammy, I should say. Dame Slammy. Yes, Amy Slammy. Got it. You'll be there. You'll be listed, Amy. Thank you very much. C. Davis, 53.33 and no note. I wonder, it's interesting, this number. I'm not quite sure. The 33 rings familiar to me. Rochelle S., same number, 5333. No note, just know that the Factz family love is here for you. Thanks for everything, and we appreciate that very much. Carlitha Hurst, $50. Megan Emery, $50. Kyle Mann, $50. William Taylor comes in with $50 and says, knowledge. Great job, gentlemen. Thank you. Christina H., $50. She says she's paying attention. Now, I hear you. We love that you're paying attention. ZN, $50, wants a D-dead beating.
Congratulations. You're no longer a deadbeat.
Thanks, Mo, for all your shows. Here's a little something, and I'm glad to chip in. Oh, man, we hate this chip in term. And wants a Mo Karma.
I'm sending you tons of good ass energy.
Oh,
Take that.
Haven't played that in a while.
You've got karma.
Play this other one, too. Here we go.
You've got
Mo Karma.
That's what I wanted. And then our final associate executive producer, as we run through the list at $50, is Jill W., who says, love you guys in the show. Can I please get a Mo Karma? Yeah, we'll roll it out for you.
You've got
Mo Karma.
We'll be thanking the rest of these producers later on. First, a quick switch to the boostergrams that we received. Now, this works with Podcasting 2.0. It's great because the minute you get that urge, like, I want to send some value back, right next to the play button is a boost button, and you can even send a message along with it. And the traditional financial system takes no cut. It's direct peer-to-peer. And we kick it off with Sir Sean of the Allegheny Valley. 100,000 sats. We really appreciate that. A nice boost for us. He says they're running different experiments on all of us to see which gets them and what they want the quickest and cheapest. Will we wake up in time? Some will. Some will. He would like a woosah.
Woosah.
Got that for you.
Woosah. Woosah.
Lavish comes in with a row of nines, 99,999. It says, always great. We appreciate that. 84,000 from Harvhat, 50,000 from Chad Farrow, 49,490 from Auburn Citadel, 44 and 37 from Merlin. He sent in 2 boosts, another one for 48,827. These are meaningful numbers. This makes a difference in our lives. We appreciate that. We got,
and I'm hearing some converts.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I'm hearing some convert names come from the fiat over to the boost.
We love that. Well. Yep, we love that. Really appreciate it. You can use your Cash App, by the way, to fill up one of these Podcasting 2.0 apps, newpodcastapps.com. Clued, 33,333. I don't know who turned me on to this. One of the most previous episodes, but I know I heard the recommendation from Moe Factz show, so passing it on. I read the book War Against the Weak by Edwin Black. Yes, we discussed this on No Agenda. This is very much, he says, Mr. Black did a deep dive and a mountain of research into the American eugenics programs of the early 1900s. The book can be downloaded. You can also buy it. I purchased it. Also, every show is so jam-packed with research. I don't care how long, Mo, it takes to get recorded. Just get it done. And then he ends up with a Go Podcasting. Oh, I haven't had one of those in a while. Hold on a second. Can I do a Go Podcasting? Where'd it go? Oh.
It's not right there.
no, that's what you think, but hold on a second. Go, maybe this works.
We also
no. Here it is. Can't believe I misplaced that. Go Podcasting! There you go. That's better. Sorry about that. It's very unprofessional. Sir Dwayne Melanson comes in with 33,333 as well. He says, episode 84 was very enlightening. Living in the Pacific North woke. All the messaging you get is saturated with very one-sided perspective. The RBG clips were surprising. End around here. RGB is almost defied. I'm trying to see what he's right here. RGB is almost deified, and there's a big I Heart RGB sign a couple of miles down the road from my house, for example. By the way, y'all is the most inclusive pronoun. On a related note, if you're ever asked for your pronouns, try putting them down as daddy, daddy, daddies. Okay, Sir Dwayne. We'll try doing that for sure. Texas Rancher says, doing great, y'all. This is what I can do for now with 25,000. It's appreciated. Sir Wags, 15,033. Thank you for your courage. Todd is in Northern Virginia, a row of sticks, 11,111. C-Dubs with 10,101. And we have Smote Meal finally at 10,000. And he says, I'm here for the conspiracy facts. Well, you came to the right place, didn't you? Thank you again for these boosts, for these boostergrams. If you'd like to onboard real quick just to see how everything works, you can use the Fountain app. You can even earn some of these sats by listening to other shows and then send them to us. And for all of that information, mofactz.com, go to the donation page, or MoFundMe, MoEFUNDME.com. And thank you to these producers for bringing us some value for Moe Factz with Adam Curry, episode number 85.
Can I trouble you for one more thing?
Of course.
Can I get a biscuit for E-Class, a.k.a. the coach who's celebrating his...
They always give me a biscuit.
Oops, sorry about that. Ready for the biscuit?
Who's celebrating his birthday this week, so...
All right, E-Class.
They always give me a biscuit on my birthday.
His big-ass biscuit for E-Class.
Yeah.
Happy
All right,
birthday.
with that out the way, with that big biscuit out the way. Oh, while you're in there, get the trigger warning ready. So, because this next set of clips right here, this is where we start to see racial evolution being applied by a racist. And I don't mean it as a disparaging term, but I wouldn't classify him as anything else. This is Jared Taylor. Have you heard of Jared Taylor before?
I don't think so.
Okay, hold up.
Wait, so let me do the trigger warning first then.
Why do black?
Oops, here we go.
Uh-oh.
Trigger warning. Trigger warning.
There you go.
Trigger warning.
All right, everybody.
Your attention, please. Trigger warning has been activated.
All right, we're ready now. We're good to go.
This is some cold, hard race truth. 20A.
Why do blacks behave the way they do? Why is it that whenever we read certain headlines, we can be almost certain that the story is about black people? For example, 4 dead, including child, after stimulus check dispute leads to gunfire. Or how about toddler died after being left alone for 6 days as mother celebrated 18th birthday? Or 2 schoolgirl carjackers aged 13 and 15 are pulled from overturned vehicle in D.C. and arrested for murder. And how about postal worker in Michigan brutally beaten by 2 women, video shows. And then there is the perennial 55 shot, 10 fatal in Chicago weekend gun violence. Even the most committed liberals must know these stories are going to be about blacks. And anyone whose eyes aren't shut tight knows that IQ has something to do with it. Even the very leftist Wikipedia recognizes that on intelligence tests there is a difference in average score between black people and white people of 1.1 standard deviations. In practical terms, that means only 16% of blacks have an IQ of 100 or higher. And it means that whites are 30 times more likely than blacks to have an IQ over 125.
All right. Who is this Jamoke?
This is Jared Taylor. He's a big pusher of the bell curve studies.
Right.
You could hear him. You ain't gonna find us on YouTube, so you probably need to go. I think they got this on BitChute. You want to watch
BitChute is a fan favorite.
Man, BitChute is like the YouTube of old.
Oh,
where, that's how it should be. Everybody should be able to put their information out there, and if it stands up, it stands up, and if it doesn't, it gets ridiculed. But This is where the rubber meets the road at. This is the why do blacks behave like they do. Anytime you start your sentence off like that, and this is where that blacks. This is where, because you had asked me about that before. When you use it like this,
right? Can you say blacks? Can you say the blacks? Yeah, that was the question.
Right. So he said, "Why do blacks behave like they do?" And he goes off and he lists a bunch of headlines, which are true, and there are huge problem. I'll never deny that. But I think they're being amplified for a reason as well.
This is another guy who comes from the tech world, interestingly enough. Did you know that he was the West Coast editor for PC Magazine for a while there in the 80s?
I did not know that.
See, and I happen to know someone who wrote for PC Magazine in the 80s, so I'm going to have to ask Dvorak about this guy. That's interesting. Huh.
What's up with these tech guys? But maybe they look like, we use the computer analogy, but maybe they look at humans like computers. And just say, okay, they spec differently.
No, I think there's something to that. Shockley, clearly, the inventor of the transistor effect. I would say most Silicon Valley guys and gals who are at the top, they're all into singularity, and they believe in a different version of eugenics, and that their version is, we can improve the broken ones. We can improve the bad ones. We can improve ourselves. We can make it all better through technology.
Right. So
transhumanism.
This is where the Darwinism rubber meets the road. Where I am, just to make it clear, there are issues. There is a gap but is it due to nature or nurture? And this is the big question nobody really wants to ask. Because if it's due to nurture, what are the things what are the main components that's leading to these test differences and these issues that we see that are prevalent in the quote unquote community? So, but if it's nature, then it's like, okay, are we gonna get some Elon chips to to get us up to speed? You know, and you just spoke about this singularity,
so where does geographic zip code fall? Is zip code a part of nurture, or is zip code a part of nature? Because zip code's being used.
Oh, it would be nurture. Because it's the environment you grow up in. Nature solely means what genes was passed from your two parents and their lineage going backwards.
Right.
So that's how you're born. You know what I mean? Like whatever you receive from them, that would be nature. Everything that happens post birth would be nurture, which I believe that's the real issue.
Sure. Being
poor education, poor diet, poor environment, overstimulation due to television and media in general. These things, lack of culture, all of these things. And you can at me on that one. Our culture, we had one. It was manipulated in the 70s, like we talked about before, with black exploitation films, No Father in the House. That totally ruined whatever culture we were forming at the time. So, but he goes on to speak about in this next clip about the bell curve, which we're going to get deeper into. But I'm going to let him continue on with his triggering.
Back in 1994, the famous book, The Bell Curve, reported long-established findings on the correlation between low IQ and all kinds of behavior we don't want. Crime, poverty, illegitimacy, shiftlessness, obesity, you name it. All these things are a lot more likely in people with low IQs than in smart people. But IQ isn't the whole story. If you compare blacks and whites with the same IQs, black behavior is still different. So, what's going on? The obligatory explanation is that systemic racism and white supremacy are making life miserable for black people. But there's a better explanation. And Professor Richard Lynn of the University of Ulster has done the most important work on this question. He's written a book showing that blacks across the board are more likely than whites to be psychopaths. There's a good summary of his findings in an article at amran.com called Race and Psychopathic Personality. The American Psychiatric Association defines psychopathic personality as including such things as breaking rules, failure to plan ahead, aggressiveness and frequent fighting, risk-taking, failure to honor financial obligations, being a bad parent, and the inability to be sexually faithful. Blacks are more psychopathic than whites on all counts. And, by the way, whites are more psychopathic than Asians.
Okay.
And look, I respect his honesty. Mm-hmm. Even though it may be flawed, in thinking, I respect the fact that he would get up in front of a camera and state what he feels, because you can't hide. And we talked about that before on the last show, how they try to do the guy from Dysgenics to silence him. No, you got to let this be said. Then we can have a hard, honest conversation around it. And I'm saying, as people. But it's two words I want to focus on here out of what he said. One, let's start with shiftlessness. Okay, shiftlessness has are you familiar with that definition, first of all?
Well, no.
Shiftless?
No.
Okay, it means lacking in... Go ahead.
Shiftless?
Yeah, shiftless.
No.
shiftless.
Laziness, indolence, and lack of ambition.
Lacking, this is from Merriam-Webster, mm-hmm. Lacking in resourcefulness, inefficient, okay? Mm-hmm. And if you're resourceful, that means able to meet situations, capable of devising ways and means So this goes right down to the savage mind state of Manifest Destiny said, hey, they're not resourceful. They have all those natural resources and they're living in mud huts. We're entitled to go kill them and take their land.
They're savage. They're dumb. They don't know what they're doing. They have no clue.
This goes key back to what Darwin was talking about. Like they're inefficient. Let's just boil it down to that. But the reason why I want to point out this word too is it has a cultural connotation, maybe to people my age and maybe older, because this used to be a main component of the definition of the N-word when the N-word actually had a definition before it became just a derogatory term towards black people.
Okay.
It was shiftless, ignorant, you know what I'm saying? And it was one more. I mean, they think they said lazy was another one, which lazy and shiftless kind of redundant, but it like basically shiftless was used like you had no underpinnings. I remember this as a child. Now, this was how it was defined to us. And that's why when he used that word, I was kind of triggered. You know what I'm saying?
I'll bet.
Yeah, like, whoa. You're saying like, but under the definition of it, it's true that they're inefficient. You're given all of this opportunity, all of this knowledge, and you're not doing anything with it. So from his perspective,
that's inefficient.
Right. That's inefficient. The other one is psychopath. Let's see.
Yeah, this was kind of weird. The psychopath. I mean, according to Merriam-Webster, antisocial behavior, narcissism, superficial charm, impulsivity, callous, unemotional, lack of guilt, lack of empathy.
Yep, and a mentally unstable person. I mean, that's the core definition of it. So this is just another way of saying savage. It's a more scientific way to say it.
Yeah.
But once again, we're back to Darwinism. Yeah. And like I said, I'm not setting these clips up this way. I didn't make Jared Taylor say the things he said, but this is how they view it. And they're like, and it's baked in. It's genetics. It's nature. Because if it's nurture, then you fix the condition that's, with the nurturing process.
Yeah, they clearly think it's nature.
Oh, yeah. So let's go ahead and get into 20C.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
As noted earlier, psychopaths have trouble planning ahead, and you can test whether people live in the present or think about the future. In the 1970s, Walter Mischel came up with the Marshmallow test, in which he gave children a choice between one marshmallow now or two marshmallows at some point in the future. This and similar studies with older children find that people who can delay rewards, that is, those who think in terms of the future, get better grades, are less likely to smoke or take drugs, and are more successful in life. These results have been widely reported. Much less widely reported are the racial differences, with the usual pattern. Whites are more willing than blacks to wait for a greater reward, and Asians are more willing than whites. You get the same race differences when you control for IQ, because the ability to delay gratification is correlated with intelligence, but it's not the same thing as intelligence. Why would blacks be more psychopathic? In his excellent book, Making Sense of Race, Edward Dutton argues that it's because of evolution.
When was this interview from? How long ago was this recorded?
This is recent. No, this ain't OG. This is recent, and it's called. If you want to find it on BitChute, it's More Than IQ. Is the title of the video.
Crikey,
I forget the name of his operation, but let me just go. Okay. Now, when people say, okay, I think, okay, let me back up a little bit, because I'm a little bit flustered here. White supremacists are the psychopaths.
Yes.
By his definition, breaking rules. Who breaks more rules than white supremacists? And I'm not talking about the ideal Kentucky, you know what I'm saying, with a gun rack and a rebel flag. I'm talking about the hardcore one world globalist mindset. Because that's the fuller definition, nearly fullest definition of white supremacy is a one world government, i.e. the Illuminati, globalism, whatever, you know what I'm saying, you fill in the blank. Okay, now here, this is Jared Taylor's criteria for a sociopath. I mean, a psychopath, excuse me. Breaking rules. Check. Failure to plan ahead. Well, they plan ahead. They plan well ahead, so I can't give them that one. You know what I'm saying? Okay. Aggressive and fighting. Didn't Nancy Pelosi just fly to Taiwan to provoke people? Aren't we sticking our finger in Russia's eye? No other way you go about it. But isn't this whole world surrounded around fighting? Ain't we killed the terrorists for the 4th time? The same one?
Don't ixnay on the killing again.
Okay, now
you absolutely. It's totally psychopathic behavior.
Risk taking. Hey, let's release this thing for this lab in China and see what happens.
Even better. Gain of function research. You know what? They made a law here. Let's just send it to China. We can trust those guys.
Right. Okay. Bad credit. Not holding up to your financial responsibilities. Who's printing more money? Mm-hmm. Oh, you know what I'm saying? Who has a deficit right now? Bad parenting, sex, I'm saying unfaithful sex. I mean, that kind of thing. So, I mean, and he'll be the same kind of person that tell you that the one world government, or maybe he won't, but people that buy into his way of thinking will tell you, oh, it's the globalists that's trying to ruin our kids and teach them about transgenderism, da 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 da. And when you bring up the term white supremacy, it's like, no. Ain't no such thing as white supremacy. Well, what about if I define it as a one world government?
Right. That's the same thing if you define it properly.
Right, but they're so triggered on holding on to that. It's so embedded in part of their identity. I get it. I understand that, you know, you're saying part of my identity, but which they don't identify with you. That's the thing.
Correct.
These literate people don't identify.
Correct.
You're trying to identify with them, but they don't identify with you.
Right.
And they're saying you're on their chopping block just as much as me. And as you see with how Jan 6 and all this stuff is playing out, they got to get you out the way first because you got the guns.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying it's this. It go to show you how, like, if someone like me says white supremacy is the issue, of course I need to define any term I use. But then it's like, no, that's not it. But then they'll say, yeah, globalism is ruining the world. Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
We're saying the same thing.
Well,
but that's why it's important to define it, though.
Yes, well, it's semantics in that case, but the problem is that white supremacy has been morphed into a political slur against anyone who's not a leftist, a Marxist, progressive.
Right, because even now, black people could be white supremacists or
Clarence Thomas. He's the black face of white supremacy.
Thank you. I was trying to think of the term, but now you see. But we also got to identify what white supremacy is, and it ain't nothing more supreme than take this shot or else.
That's right.
Or stay in your house or else. Or give me your guns or else. I mean, that's the biggest kind of thug I ever seen in my life, and scary too. So I just want to lay that out, and then let's go to the marshmallow test. I just want to ask you a question. Have you heard of the marshmallow test?
I have a feeling I heard about the marshmallow test on this show in a previous episode. I'm not sure why, but I've heard of it. Yes.
Okay, so basically, instant gratification versus delayed gratification is the whole, you're saying.
Yeah, because you have to be smart to see that it's much smarter to wait and get to later on, which, that all depends. How hungry are you? I mean, there's a lot of reasons where the marshmallow. And by the way, I reject the premise that you should be giving out free marshmallows at all. This is not healthy. Should not be giving out marshmallows as some kind of test. Make it a steak or something.
And what if the kid that didn't eat the marshmallow just didn't like marshmallows? See what I'm saying? You're projecting on him. It's like, oh, you're going to be successful, kid. You didn't eat the marshmallows. It's like, I don't even like marshmallows. Yeah. But this is how arbitrary these tests are.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying there's something to it. Now, we do have a serious issue with delayed gratification versus instant gratification. And that's how basically they would define an unfit person, is because you don't think long term. You think short term.
Mm-hmm.
Now, can a person that's a one marshmallow person become or learn to be a two marshmallow person? I think so.
Of course.
But they don't. See, that's the problem. It's like, nope, you ate the one marshmallow, send it to the gas chamber. And that's basically how it boils down. I know I'm being very crude with it, but that's how they look at it. Like, it's baked into your DNA. You're screwed.
The part of this, I think you mentioned it on the last episode, and I've actually thought about I should go back and revisit Trading Places.
Right.
Because that really, yeah, it was with money, but it was also, it was true white supremacy of Mortimer and his brother there, who was like, oh, you know, can we take this savage and can he then become as successful as we can? You know, it's all kind of part of the same attitude.
That's the argument that's going on right now between the two wings of the one world government. One saying, you know what, white people are and Asians are genetically superior, so we need to give them every advantage possible to take up the spots we have. And then the other side is saying, well, we have talented people of all hues that'll go along with it, and we need to, you know what I'm saying, let the cards fall where they may. And that's the bet between Mortimer and his brother, was like, could they switch two people from two different backgrounds and prove that it's nature or nurture? That's basically the whole movie in a nutshell. Is nature versus nurture. And it proved come out, it was nurture.
Yeah.
If you gave somebody from lower background the opportunity, they would flourish. And then if you put somebody from a higher, more affluent background on the streets, they would become a savage in a matter of days.
Right.
So yeah, that movie was a very heavy movie.
Worth revisiting.
Very heavy movie.
It's worth revisiting. It's good.
All right, so now he's going to answer our question of why are whites better?
Whites and Asians evolved in harsh northern climates in which people had to make plans to make it through the winter. They had to cooperate to hunt and share food, and couples had to stay together for children to survive. Africa was more forgiving. Cooperation, planning ahead, and care for children were less important. Psychopaths could survive, reproduce, and pass along their genes. I think this is as good an explanation as any. The point is, however they got that way, people of different races are, on average, different. Expecting everyone to be the same is crazy. Blaming whites when blacks fall short is not just crazy, it's vicious. Until we understand this, we can't even begin to talk about America's problems, much less solve them. Thank you for watching.
Hold on a second. He's kind of contradicting himself here. If it's nature versus nurture, what he's kind of saying here is, well, back in the day, early on, it was nurture because, you know, these were things that were taught. You had to plan ahead to make sure that, you know, the cold winter, et cetera, et cetera. And then it became nature somehow. You know what I'm saying? That's a little weird.
What he's saying is the harsh elements eliminate the sociopaths. I think that's the word. Psychopaths, excuse me. It eliminated the psychopaths in those colder elements.
Ah, okay.
If you didn't think, because it was basically nature took its place.
I got you.
If you were the grasshopper instead of the ant, nature had a way of weeding you out, and it made for a better stock. This is the word they like to use. It made for better stock.
So the people were naturally selected in Europe and Northern Europe because the smart ones did what was necessary.
Right.
And all the dumb ones died off.
And they died off. And Africa was so nice and warm and lush, it was a hotbed for psychopaths to thrive.
Yeah, you don't have to plan ahead at all in Africa. No, for nothing.
No, you walk down and get a coconut off the tree. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to worry about anything.
So easy. So easy.
And I would say to him, so now if China puts its foot up America's butt, hey, America just... It is. I mean, that's just nature taking its court, right, Jared? Right? I mean, they're to the right of you on you know what I'm saying? They're more less psychopathic. Right? So I mean, see how this thing becomes a slippery slope? It's if it's good for the goose, then it's good for the gander. Whatever it may be, may be. If you know what I'm saying, if China takes America out. If it takes it was what was meant to be because they were a better stock. But I know he doesn't think that way.
I doubt it too, yeah.
And I'm not making this personal about him, but I'm just saying people that subscribe to his way of thinking, they'd be like, wait a minute. Like, that's different. No, if Chinese and Asian people are better, they deserve to be the number one superpower in the world. By their logic, by your own logic.
Mm-hmm.
But that's not the way it goes. And this is why this is why they don't have any foot to stand on. But with that said, we can go through these next few clips kind of fast because what it does is this is Jordan Peterson,
Mm-hmm.
And what he's going to do is break down the occupations by IQ level. And what I want people to point out is I always says, and this is where this genesis of the statement, it starts with us. It starts with us. Now, once this machine gets to go rolling, they coming for everybody. So he's going to go through the occupation by IQ, and we can go through these 5 pretty quickly.
Okay, so how smart do you have to be different things in life? Well, if you have an IQ of 116 to 130, which is 85th percentile and above, so it's 1 person in 8 up to 1 person in 130, I believe is 85, 90, 95? Is it 95? I think it's 95. 1 person in 8 to 1 person in 20. Then you can be a attorney, a research analyst, an editor, an advertising manager, a chemist, an engineer, an executive manager, etc. That's now, that's not the high end for IQ, by the way. You know, that it can go up. Well, it can go up indefinitely, although there's fewer and fewer people as it goes up. So if you want to be the best at what you're doing, bar none, then having an IQ of above 145 is a necessity. And maybe you're pushing 160 in some situations. And maybe that's making you 1 person in 10,000 or even 1 person in 100,000. And then also, to really be good at it, you probably have to be reasonably stress tolerant and also somewhat conscientious. So, you know, people... Well, you think, well, why is it that smart people are at the top of dominance hierarchies? And the answer to that, in part, is because they get there first, right? I mean, everything's a race, roughly speaking. And the faster you are, the more likely you are to be at the forefront of the pack. And intelligence, in large part, is speed. That's not all of it is. So if you're moving towards something difficult rapidly, the faster people are going to get there first.
Okay.
Everything is a race.
Yeah.
I think this is like basically the definition or genesis of the word.
Ooh.
How we use race. But the fact that he defines it by speed
is interesting.
Thinking. I find it interesting because I don't know what the right answer is, but is intelligence more about speed or depth? Because you can have somebody that is quick on the draw and fast to get there, or you could have somebody that has a deeper understanding. So when you define, you know what I'm saying, and this is why I think the intelligence is a very hard thing to measure, to pin down.
Yeah, of course.
Because then you got to factor in emotional intelligence. And I made this story before about Mrs. Factz with the kids. Her emotional intelligence blows mine out the water.
Right. Because
her reading of nonverbal cues and, you know, and just, it just superior to mine. So what intelligence are we talking about here? And how, is it deep thinking or how fast you can regurgitate and pull up
It's subjective. It's really subjective.
But as you see,
it's not intended to be. Yes,
it's pretty defined. So if you want to, we can go to the next one.
Yep.
IQ of 110 to 115. So that's 85th to 73rd to 85th percentile. Copywriter, accountant, manager, sales analyst, general manager, purchasing agent, registered nurse, sales account executive. If you look at universities, the smartest people they're above this. Who are the smartest people at university? What do you think? Mathematicians, physicists and mathematicians. Right. I could tell you who's on the other end, but I won't. Yeah, I'd like to, though. Anyways, okay. Going down now 103 to 108 is slightly above average, right? 60th to 70th percentile. Store manager, bookkeeper, credit clerk, lab tester, general sales, telephone sales, accounting clerk, computer operator, customer service rep, technician, clerk, typist. So you see, at this level, people have some technical skill and some ability to deal with complex things. Okay, that's dead average.
All right, so now we go. Where do podcasters come in? Around 80, 75?
I don't know. I mean, maybe we're at the other end. I mean, maybe we're at the top end of it.
Let's get the next one going here.
Number 3.
100 is average. Dispatcher in a general office, police patrol officer, receptionist, cashier, general clerical, inside sales clerk, meter reader, printer, teller, data entry, electrical helper. 95th to 98. Machinist, food department manager, quality control checker, security guard, unskilled labor, maintenance, arc welder, die setter, mechanic. Good IQ range for relatively qualified tradespeople. 87 to 93. Messenger, factory production worker, assembler, food service worker, nurse's aide, warehouseman, custodian, janitor, material handler, packer. Now, what you're starting to see is that as you move down the hierarchy, the jobs get simpler. They're more likely to be assigned by other people, or they're repetitive. Because what IQ predicts to some degree is how rapidly you can learn something, but once you've learned it, it doesn't predict necessarily how well you do at it. And so the more repetitive jobs people with lower IQs are more suited to more repetitive jobs.
Hello, metaverse.
Yeah.
Get your AI goggles on. You'll be operating the same procedure over and over again all day long.
And 2 things. So, 1, this made me start to think about Forrest Gump. Remember, he was on that mental retardation cutoff on the IQ score.
Mm-hmm.
If you recall the movie.
Of course.
But his mama sure did care about his education. And that opened up his opportunities for everything else that transpired. Of course, it's a fictitious movie, but I'm just saying how arbitrary the score can be. And, who to say if he was mentally retarded, what would have played out. And then another thing I want to point out is the military. I just heard this recently on Tucker Carlson. They actually lower the IQ score for entry into the military.
Yeah. That's because they can't get anybody because everyone's so unhealthy.
Right. And the reason why I'm bringing these up is as the requirement for a higher IQ is, more needed than ever. We're having less and less people with the necessary IQ to make it. So what do we do with those people?
I'm sure there's some good ideas out there.
I think we went through them before. I'm just laying it out like now it's starting to crystallize.
Yeah.
Why they think the way they think. And I guess we can go ahead and jump into number 5.
Under 87, is there something? Well, no. Right. That's a big problem. And it's something our society has not addressed at all. Jobs for people with IQs of less than 85 are very, very rare. So what the hell are those people supposed to do? It's 15% of the population. What are they supposed to do? Well, we better figure it out, because one of the things that's happening too is that as the high IQ tech geeks get a hold of the world, the demand for cognitive power is increasing, not decreasing, right? You want to be a teller? Well, those checkout machines, they're not so simple. You want to work at McDonald's? You think that's a simple job? You don't see robots working at McDonald's. And the reason for that is that what McDonald's workers do is too complex for robots to do. So this is a discussion that no one wants to have, but that's okay. It's still a problem, and it has to be dealt with. So the U.S. government, I think I told you this at one point already, it's illegal to induct anyone into the U.S. Army if they have an IQ of less than 83, right? It's about 10% of the population. Because the U.S. Army, and they've been doing IQ testing since IQ testing began, because they want everybody they can possibly get into the Army, because in peacetime, they use it as a way of moving people up the socioeconomic ladder, and in wartime, well, obviously, you need as many soldiers as you can get your hands on. And so you're not going to be any pickier than you have to be.
Oh, okay. So that's where we get your immigrants who come in. Perfect.
And they just lowered it. I mean, he stated it at 83, and I'm assuming this Tucker Carlson's claim was made after this clip was made. So what if he said there's not a job for people at 85? What else could you do in the military?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, is this a scale that is used consistently? Is this actually used in hiring practices, or is it just anecdotally what he's explaining to us here?
I think they probably go and do a sample of people in certain occupations and see where their IQ is.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, I'm just saying that we're going to have an abundance of people that's going to be out of a job, and it's going to be out of a purpose more than a job. I mean, of course, a job is a means of finances, but it's also a meaning of purpose. And when you don't have people with purpose, that's a scary thing. And I want to.
Well, I guess the modern day version of this score is: do you have a degree from a university? Doesn't even matter what it is. You got to have that degree. Now you're kind of baseline 100, even if it's gender studies.
That's a good point. And that's why I was saying about that's why they use it in politics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
As a covert way of making that statement that you just made. People with IQs over 100 vote this way. And then they can leverage that into shame. And just one final point before we move into the next donation segment. I want to let people know how fast automation is moving, because we don't really realize it. But do you realize that Redbox put Blockbuster out of business, and brown red boxes are being put out of business? This is how fast we're moving.
And MTV hasn't played videos in 35 years.
That's crazy how, I mean, because try to explain Blockbuster to your kids.
No, but I mean, even just 2007 is when the first iPhone came out. Look at what's happened. That's the metric for me. That's when everything started to happen. That's when we got increase in all kinds of good and bad things. And talk about your evolution. The human species was not prepared and is still not equipped for what smartphones do and algorithms that control the experience. It's not healthy.
But one last point is this: if they really truly wanted to be fascist, they could say, okay, your smartphone can only access meaningful and beneficial information. The same thing with diet, but they didn't make it that way because they setting you up to fail.
Yeah.
I want to drill that thing through, is that they're setting you up to fail. This is the thresher. This is the gauntlet. And it's stacked against you to fail because everybody can't make it.
They see a necessity to cull.
Yeah, we got to do better. But with that said, thanks to more people.
Yeah.
I understand that there's some people out there who need my services. Yes, Lord. Are there any people out there who are weak? Yes. Any people out there who are weary? Yes. Any people out there who are tired? Yes. Any people out there who just need a heal? Yes. Y'all got cash? Yes. Well, then come on down.
to thank a few more people as we wind out our producers for episode 85 of Moe Factz with Adam Curry. A good, interesting note from Cameron Rose, who came in with $45 and says, "Hi, Mo and Adam. I have to say I was greatly disappointed to hear your pontificating on Darwin and his seminal work, The Origin of Species. You could not have been more wrong about Darwin and his views, and I suggest you do a lot more research before discussing any topic touching on evolutionary theory again." Oh, thank you for telling us what to do. This was especially embarrassing because I know it does not represent the usual quality of research and insight you both normally provide. For the record, the word race was explicitly used in his book as a synonym for species or variety and has nothing to do with human ethnicity. Had genes already been discovered, I have no doubt he would have used that word instead, being the more accurate term for what he was describing. Otherwise, keep up the great work that you both do. GBG. All right. Well, let me approach this one. Doesn't matter. I disagree, by the way. I can read the title. We read the whole title. It's very clear what it says. But okay, let's say it was just about animals, species, varieties. His work is being used for eugenicist purposes. So it doesn't matter if he meant it that way or not. It's been used that way.
And I'll respond back to this letter to ask the question, then how did he use the term race in his quote to say, at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Charles Darwin, the Descent of Man.
We'd be happy to hear back from you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Cameron. We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate the pushback. We always appreciate pushback.
Dale Spot, $40. Thanks for doing the work on these deep dives. I always thought I looked at things with an open mind, but I've been missing the other perspective. Everybody misses perspective, brother. Dale has another one. So he's, this is interesting. Another $40.
Oh,
yeah, he belongs. I'll have to put him up in the executive producer category, which is no problem. Let me just make sure I mark that happens. Mo and Adam, I sent my first donation. Forgot to let you know I'm no longer a deadbeat, so I figured I'd donate again to be de-deadbeated. Thanks for all your work pulling back the curtain. Of course, we'll do that for you.
Congratulations. You're no longer a deadbeat.
3333 from James C. James C. says, job well done. Thank you. Susan Tillett, 25. Keen Davidson, $25. Jared Westcott, $25, and says, you have changed the way I view a lot of things in the world. Not a lot, but it is what I can show the appreciation. Thank you. No. Again, Jared, this is the whole idea of value for value. If it's not, it may not seem like a lot to who? It seems like it's a lot for you. You just said that. So it is a lot and therefore very valuable and appreciated. James Brown, $24.80. Sam Smock, he sends us $23.06. This is interesting. The Rothschilds are big into gardening. Thanks for going straight to the root of what's going on in the last episode.
That's good to know.
William Torres, $20. He says the white coats are coming. Yeah, no kidding. Mike Riley Comics, $20. Thanks for what you're doing. Here's to your continued success. Mike, thank you so much. Matthew Weaver, $20. Philip E., $20. He says, just finished up episode 84. Good stuff. Keep it coming, please. John Paul Chauffon Fields sent us a row of Canadian ducks, $22.22 in dollarettes, for the value received here at the farm in Cavan, Ontario. Thanks, Mo and Adam. I am no longer a deadbeat. That's right.
Congratulations. You're no longer a deadbeat.
Derek Birch, $14.27. He says, I've appropriated your logo to hit more people in the mouth here in Toronto. Please accept this small donation for now. You've been on fire with the last few episodes and depth you put into it. Keep up the great work. Oh, Deez laughs. Deez laughs. He does a lot of end of show mixes for No Agenda. Thanks, Deez. David Vargas, $10. Thank you. Mo Karma, please. Got it.
You've got
Mo Karma.
Scott Webb needs another reminder that value for value it's in the eye of the receiver. Sorry, I'm poor, he says. Well, first of all, I'm sorry to hear that. But thank you, because $10 is a lot of value if you're poor. So this is how we view it, and we appreciate it. No need to apologize at all. Rorschach and Rory White Photography, $10. Thank you. Now we have a very long note here from Seth Peterson, who says, I've been a listener to the podcast after hearing Adam discuss it the first time on the Rogan podcast. I truly enjoy and appreciate your takes on the topics you discuss. After listening to an episode, I often have felt that I should send a message regarding my thoughts and or additional resources which were relevant to the episode, but have not done so until now. As you discuss the concepts of the origin of white supremacy and the ideas of those in power looking down on everyone else, this book came to mind. White Trash, The 400-Year Untold History of Class in America by Nancy Eisenberg. It's a dry read, something I would expect to be read in a college class. That said, there are some interesting aspects and topics worth noting. In relation to your most recent episode, the main concepts which she discusses that I thought were relevant were the ideas of the people who were sent to the Americas by the British elite and how the people were viewed by the upper class. Long and short, before America was a country, the people and the land were considered waste due to not having purpose, which was deemed useful or beneficial. And she writes how the poor, often called mud eaters, were seen as inferior breed, as in a subspecies of human. Nancy does a great job of documenting her sources, so I'm sure you could do a deep dive if interested. Lastly, I finally got off my duff and started a monthly PayPal subscription. Please keep up the great work, and I wish you the best. Seth Peterson, $10. Thank you very much. Seth, $10 from Dwayne. Yes,
I was about to say that, just to respond to him, that source is already on file to be discussed in a future episode.
Baked in.
You're way ahead of me.
Thank you. $10 from the following people: Dwayne Spellman Jr., Arsonomics, Eric Runkle, Andrew Butterfield, Aaron Sneed, Dave Jones. I don't know if that's our Dave Jones. Hello, Dave Jones. $9.99 from Benjamin Bateman, who says, oh, come on. I guess that's good. I don't know. Johnny Hipwell. $9.99, a Gretzky donation, because he was the greatest. Interesting. I don't know why, but I like it. Joshua Goodson, $5. Thanks for all the insight. Brandon Glass with $5. Have some cuck bucks. We appreciate it. Moises Hernandez, $4.20. And of course, we find Terry, the human subscription Keller, with his $4.11. And finally, $2 from E&E. Thank you all so much for supporting Moe Factz with Adam Curry, episode number 85. It is highly appreciated. Remember, every episode takes effort. We need some type of value return to continue. All you do is just determine that for yourself. Send it off. You can find all the information on our donation page at mofactz.com, or go directly to that, mofundme.com, MOEFUNDME.com. And thank you again for sponsoring episode 85 of Moe Factz with Adam Curry.
All right, so now we got to go to the OG. This is Charles Murray, and he was the co-author of The Bell Curve. And with Richard Herrnstein. So we this is where a lot of this IQ standard deviation gap between the races stem from. So I guess we can go ahead and jump into number 29.
Okay, Thomas Sowell has claimed that the difference in IQ between races is unimportant because it increases in all of them. It is only that, for example, whites began to increase earlier than blacks. We all get higher results in IQ tests as time goes by. What do you think about that?
Tom Sowell is referring there to the Flynn effect, and the argument goes like this, that basically the black mean right now is about where the white mean was in 1940 if you equate these IQ scores over time. And that's a tricky phenomenon. That's a tricky thing to say because it does require you to assume that you're looking at real changes in cognitive functioning. But Tom Sowell, who is both a friend and a person I admire greatly, has said other things about the IQ difference where he's convinced that it is a source of its source is a lot of cultural attributes. And to me, I don't think I need to argue with that question.
Okay.
So the reason why I like this conversation with him and Thomas Sowell, which we're going to hear him speak in a minute, is this is too academic. They have mutual respect for each other. But Charles Murray, he's really pointing out just what he's reading scientifically. But he doesn't really make a statement whether it's nature or nurture. But it was so triggering that people don't even want to have the conversation. And I'm like, if you can't have the conversation, then you never, ever get to the root of the problem. And that's the problem with these things being shut away. And this is when I look at the Boule, because they don't want to have this conversation or even let this information get the light of day because they're different. I made it out. You know what I'm saying? I'm the superior of my gene. I'm saying of my race. I have the superior genes.
Right.
So they don't want, if it's nurtured, that's more competition for them.
No, they can never admit to nurture. Of course not. That goes against their whole nature, in fact.
Right. Good point. So I just want to make clear and lay out this point about Charles Murray, that he just stating what as a scientist, what his findings are saying. But it allows for, as we've seen before, Jared Taylor to take them and spin them in a way to push a narrative, and that's often what happens even with Darwin. People took it, the Germans took it and spin it and did their own thing with it, as they learned from the Americans, as we've seen. So, so let's go ahead and get into the second part of this clip.
If I were to differ with Tom at all, and I'm not even sure how much we differ on this, it would go as follows. The gap has not reduced. When they first started to give IQ tests back in the early part of the 20th century, the gap was 1 standard deviation in statistical terms, or 15 IQ points, which means, for those of you who aren't statisticians, which I hope is almost everybody, I say that because I don't think being a statistician is necessarily the right way to spend your life, that if you have somebody who has a 15-point IQ difference and they're 1 standard deviation above the mean, that means that they're the 84th percentile of all people who take the test, compared to the person at the mean, which is the 50th percentile. So it's not a small difference. It's a pretty good sized difference. That hasn't really changed. There was some narrowing in certain kinds of tests during the 1970s and 1980s, and those were mostly academic tests. And that narrowing seemed to be real. There was some narrowing in the SAT. There was some narrowing in some other tests. In the most purely IQ tests, things like the Wechsler and the Stanford-Binet and the rest of them, the most recent renormings of those tests continue to show a 1 standard deviation difference.
Well, yeah, if you keep renorming them and jiggering the numbers, I think you can continue to show, standard deviation, 15 points lower. Whoa, no good. You must be black.
And this is the danger of affirmative action in this current state. Because when you say we need somebody with lower qualification, lower grades to be on par or put in the same position as someone with, I'm just going to throw some numbers out there. Okay, we need to let somebody that has 100 IQ and grades that match that, IQ, and where the normal IQ is 120 and the grades that match that. That's kind of buying into this nature situation. I was saying we understand, but we need to grade them on a curve. And that's why I agree with Clarence Thomas. And this is why he's has a huge issue with it, because what it does is it lends credence to the fact that, we're inherently dumber.
There's another way to go with this. And what comes to mind is Kurt Vonnegut's Harold Bergeron. Have you ever read that, or maybe seen the short movie?
No, I haven't seen it.
So the concept is you have these obvious lesser people, but because we've introduced equity, and this is a great story. We've introduced equity, so therefore the fantastic, very talented ballerina now has to dance with one shoe. So she gets a handicap, so everyone will be as good. The guy who's
thank you.
The guy who's super strong and is the guy who is the best in the mill. Well, he's too strong, so they have to put a weight jacket on him to slow him down. That's the other way to go.
Right. So what you're making is my lineage or my genetics a handicap.
Yeah.
See, it's because you have to bring, it's not let's elevate you up to where you need to be. It's let's bring down everybody else
yes.
to your handicap. You know, what? You understand? I mean, that's the...
Isn't that also what golf is? Isn't that how golf works?
Right. I mean, it's literally called a handicap.
Yeah.
Yeah, but this is the problem. But a lot of people, you know, find benefit from this affirmative action in these spots. And like I said, I experienced this in corporate America. It was, oh, come tell us your sad story, your sad race story.
The HR department?
Yeah, that kind. Well, I was talking about those. What was it? I forget the name of it. The diversity and equity and inclusion.
Yeah, DEI.
DIE is what I call it.
Yes, gotcha.
It's more appropriate, but you're gonna sit in a room with your peers.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, we'd like you to tell your sad black man story so everyone can hear this and understand your plight.
But guess who else had groups? The disabled.
Yeah.
The elderly.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, and I can speak a little bit more freely about, like I said, the Indians didn't have a group, an empowerment group. The Asians didn't have an empowerment group. Aren't they minorities? Why does all of a sudden it has to be the Hispanics, the blacks, the disabled, the elderly, you know, and the gays? Oh, they had one too.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I'm just saying that when people give you support, you got to be suspicious about that support, because is it sympathy? Now we got to go back to this was Darwin, who I think was talking about sympathy. Like, we're higher creatures, so we have to have sympathies for these lesser than beings.
Yes, of course.
So this is why I was adamant about critical race theory, because this is how they were going to try to teach it. Like, you have a disability. Your race is a disability. Now let me help you.
Right.
Which no self-respecting person with an actual disability wants to be pitied and has sympathy for.
Right.
It's like when Lieutenant Dan got knocked out of his chair. He wanted to get back up in the chair himself. You know what I'm saying? Like, nobody, even if you have a legit disability, but they want the bacon into the education system that race is a disability, and I find that very troubling.
Well, also critical race theory, it teaches that being white is a disability, depending on how you look at it.
Explain. I want to make sure I fully understand you.
Because the teaching goes, you're white, you have white privilege, you're inherently a racist. That's a big part of critical race theory.
True. I can see.
So it just depends on which way you want to look at it. I of course, I understand what you're saying, but I'm looking at the same. Look, I'm supposedly the bottom of the barrel. It's not true, because the black man is already gone. The black man is done. Now it's the cis white man. Then it's the cis gay white man. Mm-hmm. And no one wants to be that. Everyone hates us. We're the patriarchy. It's all our fault.
Well, and now you fully explained it. I'll agree with you, because it's like, you know what? Because I'm gonna show you how they can flip it. You growing up in that cold, dark, indigenous environment. Now I'm gonna say something that's triggering, but I'm gonna say it how they would say it. Coming out of those caves.
Yes.
No, I'm just saying, because that's kind of like what Jared Taylor was kind of leaning to, you know, like kind of where
coming
you
out
come
of
from.
That's right, coming out of that cold cave.
Right, so you can't help that you're willing to kill other people that way. That's kind of like what you were saying.
Yes,
what they're saying. Wow, that's crazy. That's amazing how they can cut both ways.
It works both ways, doesn't it? Tell me how black parents think about critical race theory. What is it? Just, you're a black parent? You pulled your kids out of school? What was your main problem? What was your main issue? Just one line. What was your main issue with critical race theory?
Victimization
of your kids.
Yes.
And so for the white parents, they were sick and tired of being told that their children are assholes.
Right, genetically.
Yeah, genetic assholes. Because you're white, you're the fucking problem. So it was beautiful. It created horrible tension between the children on an ongoing basis. But we all looked at it from our own perspective, which is interesting.
All while nobody's learning.
Yeah, right.
The one place where you should be elevating your, intelligence is like, no. We're going to teach you about grooming and CRT and why you're a bad person or why you're disabled. And it goes on and on and on. So let's go ahead and get into 31.
And you can say that that's because of cultural reasons. You can say it's because of genetic reasons. You can say it's because of a combination of both. We don't know the answer to that question. But where Dick and I guess, would draw our line in the sand and say we think the data are quite clear on this is that the wiggle room for this difference has proved to be small. It's proved to be a very intractable difference that has not responded to a lot of attempts to narrow it. And at the time we wrote the book on the race chapter, when we talked about what had been a narrowing in the 70s and 80s, but we also saw that narrowing seem to have stopped. And so we said, it's a good time to reserve judgment about whether the narrowing will continue or whether it won't, because we just don't know yet. It's now been 7 years since then. If anybody knows of any data which indicates it's continuing to narrow, I'd love to hear about it. I know of some other recent data that have come out which indicates that it's not. So it is an intractable difference. It's not a result of cultural bias in the tests. It's large enough to be... It's not the kind of thing that should be ignored. It's also not the kind of thing which should drive your opinions of people when you see somebody of one race or another. Just as when you see somebody who's an Asian, you shouldn't automatically assume they're smarter than you, even though they may very well be. Because there's enough overlap that that's a very bad predictor for individuals. That's pretty much my reading on where the data stand on the black-white issue right now.
Hey, it's not everybody. There's some smart black people.
Right, and that's kind of like they're different. That's why just different. You heard them just say, there's ones that are different. There's ones that are different. The majority are dumb. Now, don't get me wrong.
15 said deviation points.
Right. So, and this is how they use science, but they never have a question for the important, never have an answer for the important question of what's causing it. Right. I don't know. I can't tell you that. It's like, where did COVID come? We can't tell you that. We can tell you everything else.
It's kind of the basis of the whole issue. Yeah, it's the basis of the whole issue, but they can't answer it.
All these big brains. It's like they can't figure out what but one thing he said was it's not a cultural difference, not due to cultural bias. My thing is, I think it's due to culture or the lack of culture. Now, people can claim certain things are culture. I don't think we have a culture anymore. I think it was destroyed. I think that narrowing, because he said it was a narrowing. So basically, the Flynn effect, everybody was moving up the same. Like all tides, a tide rises, all boats, right?
Right.
But then there was a trajectory change that blacks were kind of gaining, closing the gap. And then all of a sudden it stopped. So that doesn't explain genetics to me. Because if you're genetically dumb, you're dumb. You know what I'm saying? And then you can do about it. You feel what I'm saying? Like it's like, and all of a sudden in the 80s and 90s, right when you had the real effects of No Man in the House and the change in the family structure in the black community was starting to really take hold, you saw the gap. The closing of the gap start to widen again.
Right, but it was external factors, obviously. It was factors that were put in by governments and society.
Right, and also personal responsibility. You can't factor that out. But once again, if we're going to say that the school system is complicit in grooming children and oppressing any kind of movement. See, this is where that thing kind of like, when you say, oh, there's parents-teacher, they're at the parent-teacher conference, the FBI, and you're saying they're coming in. You think they weren't doing that then?
Yeah.
You feel what I'm saying? Like, we got to realize we all on the same boat here. But, you can't force people to see that, but that's kind of like a running theme in the show that we do, is that we're all being pushed in the same corner.
We sure are.
All right. So now he mentioned Thomas Sowell or Sowell, or how you pronounce it. So I heard different pronunciations. He's going to speak basically countering Charles Murray's point.
Is there a relationship between, or an important relationship between race and mental capacity?
Well, capacity is if you mean by capacity potential, then who knows? Because you can't measure potential currently, and I suspect for the next 100 years or so probably. But what you can recognize and measure is capacity, developed capabilities. You can measure those with SATs and stuff like that. But potential you cannot.
So when it comes to race, how does that play into the measurements that we have today?
I'm not sure what you mean by that.
Is there a correlation between IQ, that what we have and what we're able to measure today, and race?
Oh, sure. I mean, there's always been among all sorts of groups around the world. I mean, people in the Hebrides Islands of Scotland have the same IQs as blacks in the United States. And probably for similar reasons, because they're an isolated culture. And people from isolated cultures tend not to have the same achievements as people who are in cultures that have a sort of larger cultural universe to draw upon. So the data are good for measuring what is likely to happen with a given person at a given time under given circumstances. But as for the ultimate potential at the moment of conception, no one has come close to anything like that.
Isolated culture.
Yeah.
and a great example of that is, and you've experienced it, even digitally, we're isolated culture.
Black Twitter.
I.e. Black Twitter, right. Mm-hmm. You only get a certain amount of ideas that lean a certain way. Now,
one of these days we have to really go deep on hip hop. Because you mentioned 80s.
We're working.
I mean, this is obvious. It's obvious what's, that this has been captured and hijacked.
That was the mechanism. Mm-hmm. That was the delivery system.
Right.
As if you want to put it in the terms of weapons. Hip hop was the delivery system. Hip hop itself is just like a gun. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't, an inanimate object, it's like a gun. It depends on whose hands it is and how you load it up.
What ammo it's loaded with.
Right.
It's always the payload.
Exactly. And an example of this isolated culture, and I don't have the clips because it was not really clippable. I'm sure you've seen it, but maybe not. The little black boy hitting the police.
Yeah, of course I've seen it. Yeah. You bitch. It's a 4-year-old.
Right.
4-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
That's a child that grew up in an isolated culture and has been indoctrinated in a way of thinking.
It's all the child has seen. It's obvious.
Right. And the way it seems so third worldish to me, the way that whole scene was played out. It looked like you were in like a third world somewhere, which is isolated. I mean, that's what makes it the third world. It's isolated from, industry, mm-hmm. and the benefits of industrialization. So yeah, so that's a prime example of isolated culture right there, and they want to make it more isolated. Just not to harp on the point about CRT, all the way around: school, music, entertainment, your social media feed, your recommendations. Like I said before, Netflix even changes the cover of the artwork for the shows based off of they think you're black or white.
Is that true? I didn't know that.
This is very true. I have a white.
Algo does that.
I have a white Netflix because I'll tell my wife this and she said, "You bull crapping me." But what they'll do is if they think you're black, they'll show all the black characters in the show, no matter how small their role is in the show.
Wow.
This is how vicious this system is.
No, I mean, it's of course it makes so much sense, but I had not even considered that was happening with Netflix. But it makes so much sense, of course.
Right, because I was watching, saying something, and I had clicked on my wife. She had it logged in on her account or whatever, and I was like looking at it, like everybody was black, and it was like well, person might had like a two.
You got all the white guys. You got all the white guys on your.
Yeah.
On your what? You've been hanging out with me too much.
Man, it's the Mad Men, man. They Mad Men. And
it's what you're watching too.
And
yeah,
Ozark,
okay.
yeah, they got me in. They got me in the wrong category. But yeah, they so
that's
that
fascinating.
It persuades you to stay in this isolated culture.
Oh, and that, I mean, we're used to it from social media networks. I hadn't considered that Netflix was doing it. Of course they are.
Right. All right. So now we have to ask the question, and Neely Fuller Jr. is going to answer it for us. Are white people the smartest people on the planet?
Follow logic. Don't even follow people. Don't follow organizations. Don't follow anything. Follow logic. Logic came with the universe. It's the one thing we haven't been using because the white supremacists always beat us on logic, meaning cause and effect. And does that mean that all white people are racist? Getting in the language now, you never say that. You just say that those who are. And those who are smarter and more powerful than those who aren't. In fact, the white people who believe in racism are the smartest people on the planet. I didn't say good. I said smart. Now, what is smart? Smart is being able to do what you want to do at the time that you want to do it. And ain't nobody smart enough to stop you. So that fits that criteria. The white people who believe in white supremacy on this planet do exactly what they want to do with anybody they want to do it with, who is non-white. And nobody has figured out a way to stop them from doing it, no matter how, incorrect it is. And if it's a white supremacist doing it, most likely it is incorrect. It's unjust. The system of racism itself is unjust, a system of non-justice. That's what it is. But they do it.
Yeah, we've heard this type of stuff from Neely Fuller Jr. before on the show, of course.
Right, but what we have to accept is this globalist, white supremacist system. The people who run it are the smartest people on the planet. At this time. Now that's not static. But if we allow them to do the thinking for us, like you said, like you always bring up, if we use their apps and eat their food that they suggest to us and take the medicine they suggest to us.
Yeah, we're going to die.
But they're smarter than us. If they can convince us to do it at our own detriment, this is something you have to.
It's even better than that
before you can change it.
No, it's even better than that. They've set it up so that we convince ourselves. It's continuously reinforced.
Exactly. And that's the trick of it, is that, and that's go back to little Adam. Like, it's so seductive and subtle that you felt the way that you didn't even know why you felt that way.
All right.
You know what I'm saying? It's like asking a fish, like, is the water warm? And the fish say, what's water? You know what I'm saying? Like, this system that we live in is we're so immersed in it that we don't even realize how we're being manipulated by it. And if that's the case and we continue to live in it, then we got to agree that they're the smartest people on the planet. And we just accept what's done to us. Or we could do the opposite. And I just want to make one more point, is that Neely Fuller's definition of a smart is really effective.
Right.
Because
I was going to say.
Effective is producing a decided, you decided to do something, and you can do it.
Get the desired result.
Right. Decisive and the desired effect. Hence the reason why I'm so big on the 7 habits of highly effective people. Because the only thing we can do is change our habits to become more effective, i.e. smart, for Neely Fuller's definition, to combat this system.
Right.
We have to change our habits. And you've been on this for a long time. Our off the grid habits.
Sure.
Now you're on our eating habits. I'm big on our voting habits.
Together we can survive, Mo.
Right.
We're smart together, 2 of us.
Because the 7 habits, you're saying you got to be, the first one is be proactive. The second was begin with the end in mind. Third is put first thing first. Think win-win. Seek first to understand, then to be understood, synergize, and sharpen the saw. And that's why I believe that's the only thing I think can beat the system of white supremacy. is to become effective, because what was the definition? Because all these definitions matter. What was the definition of shiftless again? Lacking in resourcefulness.
Yes.
What's resourcefulness? The ability to meet situations, capable of devising ways to meet ways and means. So if you can't devise ways and means,
you're shiftless.
You're shiftless, which you're holding their definition to be true.
Yeah.
So that's why I don't subscribe to being ineffective. And I definitely don't subscribe to being genetically flawed. No, I actually embrace my genetics, and that's what triggered people a lot, because it's like, how dare you?
But you're different. You're different.
Actually, I'm not. What was different was the nurturing process of me.
Of course.
And that's why I want to highlight. I could get up here and be like, oh, I'm different. That kind of thing. No, there's nothing different about me other than the fact that I had two people that purposely made me and reared me.
Part of the 5%.
Yeah.
The talented 10th.
So, all right, we got to get a double dose of Neely Fuller.
All right.
All right. This is him speaking more on the one world government.
White people collectively are the smartest people in the known universe. How you like that for apples? Okay. To a group like this. See? Sitting here among all these African books and whatnot. And among the white people are the white supremacists, and they are smarter than the white people who are not. And they are also the most powerful. And also, white supremacy is the most powerful religion that this world has ever seen. Nothing matches it. Not Islam, not Hinduism, Judaism, Voodooism, none of it. Confucianism, none of these religions match the religion of white supremacy, because that's what white supremacy means. It means supreme. It doesn't mean 4 carloads of skinheads riding down the street shouting nigger this and nigger that. The white supremacists would have you believe that there go the white supremacists. But the number is not very large compared to the number of black, brown, red, and yellow people on this planet. But they are still the most powerful people in the known universe at this particular time. And the smartest, because you can't be dumb and run a package like white supremacy on anybody this long.
Yeah, right on.
Yeah, so you can't be dumb. So that's the thing, people need to stop going along with it. They're right, and you deserve what you get. Either way, they're right until you prove them wrong. And I'm in the business of proving them wrong. And like I said, that's why we have to be effective. That's why I identify these things, I highlight these things, but it doesn't affect me in the way of stopping me from being productive. And if anything else, this is where I want to share with other people, because I share it with my children. And the great thing my dad ever told me, and I never forget it, we were riding somewhere, so I don't know where we're going, but like he had noticed I was kind of like, when my friends got around, I get like kind of quiet down. And then they got out of the car and he was like, you're not better than anybody else, but nobody's better than you. Mm-hmm. And that totally changed my outlook. You know what I'm saying? Because like this humble thing, be humble. I'm not humble. I'm polite, but I'm not humble, because that's people want you to turn down your light. You see what I'm saying? Because it offends them or doesn't fit in their narrative. No. I'm polite. I'm not humble. And that's troubling to people when you have confidence like that.
Where does that humble come from? Telling people that they have to be humble.
Where does it come from? It's because you don't want to stand out. The same thing like what you were saying about what CRT teaches. Okay. It's like, be humble. It's the same mentality or same message.
Right.
Right. You don't want to embrace your strengths. And a lot of people,
that's also a socialist message. Marxist message. It's all
correct.
The same. Yeah.
Correct. We're all one. We're all equal. Yeah. That kind of thing. Now, I'm like I said, the key thing is I'm not better than anybody else. That's the first part. But then the second part, nobody's better than me. So that means bring it on. Let's compete. And and really the way I see race is, I don't want to belabor the point, is the way race should be is like the Olympics. Everybody, you know what I'm saying? Everybody comes together and we challenge each other to see who's good at what. And out of that, you know what I'm saying? You get to see this one, the Kenyans kick ass at long distance running, you know what I'm saying? Whoever you're saying, Jamaican bobsled team is good,
I was waiting
whatever.
for it.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying it's like certain groups are better at certain things. That doesn't make them supreme overall. It's the fact that they want you to be humble and turn your light down. And that's what a lot of these children are being taught, like, oh, no, don't be smart. You don't want to make everybody mad at you by being smart.
Now, isn't that also a part of the early programming with the talk?
No, because the talk is framed in a sense of this is reality. You see what I'm saying? Like, this is real. This can happen, but you still don't you're not in a constant state of fear or dumbing yourself down. It's just like, this is a reality of something that can happen. But it's not like like they're sitting down every day. But this is how that little boy got to the place where he's at.
Right.
Is the constant manipulation and what's the word I'm looking for? Indoctrination. That's how you get. My dad and sit down and had to talk with me every day. Or it's like, whoo, I'm glad you made it home today. The cops could have killed you. No, it's like a condom. Like, use a condom talk. You know what I'm saying? Like, hey, use a condom. It's that kind of talk. It's like, hey, you don't use one. This kind of thing happens. So it's nuanced, but it's a little different. But yeah, so we got to talk about it. The Uberman. Are you familiar with this? The Overman. Nietzsche.
No, I'm familiar with Nietzsche, but not really.
Okay, let's go ahead and get into 34 then. This is I think where white supremacy stems from.
Section 26, the Overman. Nietzsche once said that he philosophized with a hammer. By that he did not mean anything crude like a sledgehammer that smashes things. He had in mind a delicate hammer, like the one a piano tuner uses to strike keys on a finely built musical instrument, to see which notes ring clear and which are discordant or muddy. In writing his philosophy, Nietzsche intended for his words to be like that delicate hammer on your soul. When you read them, how does your soul respond? Does it vibrate clearly, or does it wobble uncertainly? When you hear that God is dead, do those words cause you to shrink inside and fill with a squishy panic? Or do they strike a clear, pure, liberating note that heralds the beginnings of the tremendous symphony that you can become? God is dead, so we must become gods and create our own values. Yet most people are afraid of legislating for themselves. They know there is inequality and risk out there in the big bad world, so they want to let some higher power shoulder the responsibility. But, Nietzsche says, for some precious few among us, the realization that God is dead galvanizes every fiber of their being. They respond by feeling both passionately and solemnly, I will become the author. I will create. I will embrace the responsibility joyously. I will move beyond good and evil and create a new, magnificent set of values.
And this is the Overman, the Uberman?
Yes. So this is from Nietzsche, I think I pronounced it.
Nietzsche?
Mm-hmm. Okay. And the Nazi, all my credibility out the window.
Yeah, really, Mo. You should have practiced that. Yeah.
Like, oh man, like I knew it. You said 85 episodes, you blew it.
Please. Hey, this is how I pronounce it. I may be wrong too. Nietzsche.
No, well, your credibility is gone too. You know
I know. I'm just shot. It's shot.
A lot riding on this. No, but this is from the audiobook. Nietzsche. I can't get it. Whatever. And the Nazis, and this is read by the author, Dr. Stephen Hicks. So basically, this was Hitler's ideology. He borrowed from, once again, we're not saying the person prescribed to the thoughts of Hitler, but this is the weaponization of thought to fulfill a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, if God is dead, I can become a God. Or you can look at it another way. God has to be dead so we can become gods.
Ooh, that's a good way of looking at it.
And this is why Darwinism is a huge part of atheist thought process. No offense to the atheists, but it's a lot hinging on Darwin and his existence or not. Because there's really no counter argument to creationism other than Darwin that I know of. There might be other ones, but all the other ones lend to some supreme being, no matter what your theology is.
Right.
So yeah, this is why this hinges a lot on this. But yeah, God must be dead so they can become gods, and this is what we're seeing right now. That changing of definitions.
Yes.
We're not a recession.
Yeah, that's godlike behavior right there.
That's supremacy at its best. No, because I said so. That's that because I said so.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you mean we're not in a recession? No, this ain't gain of function. It's like, huh? I mean, but you see them, you're starting to see the mask
slipping
and the
off.
veil come off of you do as I tell you to do. You define it the way I define it. The dictionary is written in pencil, and that's why I was, more leaning on definitions this time, because we got to be clear on what we're defining. If not, then what world do we live in?
You need definitions.
Yeah, and that's why they have a serious attack on them. It's a reason why they're attacking the dictionary the way they are, because they're redefining everything. A woman, we're to the point now. I mean, to think how godlike you got to be to say, okay, woman has been here since the beginning of time, but we're going to redefine it.
Psych.
That's some kahunas right there, boy. All right, so I guess we can go ahead and get into where we stop at 34.
Yeah,
35.
Such an individual will raise mankind to a higher level of existence. He will be the Ubermensch, the Superman or Overman. The entire history of mankind, Nietzsche believes, will have prepared the Ubermensch for his great creative adventure. In himself, he will embody the best of the past. The physical vitality and exuberance of the past master types will flow through his veins. But Nietzsche also credits the Judeo-Christian tradition for its internalized spiritual development. By turning all of its energy inward and stressing ruthless self-discipline and self-denial, that tradition has been a vehicle for the development of a stronger, more capable type of spirit. The new masters will thus combine the physical vitality of the aristocratic masters with the spiritual ruthlessness of the slave priests of Christianity. As Nietzsche put it in one memorable phrase, the new masters will be, quote, Caesars with the soul of Christ, unquote.
That's really interesting. I did not know that Ubermensch, because of course I know Hitler and his Ubermensch, Überrasch, having grown up in the Netherlands. I didn't know it came from Nietzsche.
Yeah, the Superman. This is super superior, supremacist.
Uber above all.
Yeah. This is their ideology, but they say like Caesars with the heart of Christ.
Yeah, how about that? How about that?
What that means is we're going to be tyrants, but we're going to do it lovingly.
Yeah,
we're going to make sure you love to eat bugs. We're going to make sure
it's for your own good.
That's so lovely. It's so lovely. That's what he means. Like, we're going to do some bad stuff to you.
And you're going to like it. Love. And we're going to take you, we're going to tell you we love you. You're going to like it. Yeah. Oh, man.
That's what forms the Stockholm syndrome. Because you're like, these people love us. They're trying to save us. The end of the world's coming. Climate change.
Put this mask on.
Right. Take this shot. It's for your own good. Oh, we know it don't work, but we knew it wasn't going to work.
I've told you
but
so.
We did it out of love.
We meant well. We wanted to make sure you were safe.
That's wild, man. But it's amazing to see like the mask come off.
Yeah.
And it was let's go ahead and play the last clip, and I'll wrap it up with a point I want to make.
We cannot say ahead of time what new values the masters will create. Not being Ubermensch ourselves, we do not have the power to decide for them or even predict. But Nietzsche does indicate strongly what broad direction the new masters will take. First, the Overman will find his deepest instinct and let it be a tyrant. The creative source of the future lies in instinct, passion, and will. To put the point negatively, the Overman will not rely much on reason. Reason, of course, is the favorite method of modern scientific man, but Nietzsche holds that reason is an artificial tool of weaklings, those who need to feel safe and secure, build fantasy orderly structures for themselves. Instead, instincts are the deepest parts of your nature, and to the extent that you feel a powerful instinct welling up within you, you should nurture it and let it dominate. For from that spring flows true creativity and true exaltation. Quote, "The great man is great owing to the free play and scope of his desires and to the yet greater power that knows how to press these magnificent monsters into service." Unquote.
So this is what we see clearly with the trans situation.
Yeah.
I identify as I identify. Not as, and this is not a knock against trans. What I'm just saying is we see what we all thought was logic and reason and a defined definition. But if you're the Uberman, they don't apply to me. I could be whatever I want to be. And the point I was going to make was you saw this play out in a movie, Superman versus Batman.
I wish I had seen it, Mo. Sorry.
Because Superman, it was Superman. See, Superman represented the Uberman, which is literally that's the definition.
Superman is Uberman, yeah.
Right. He would stop, bring about good, and it didn't matter the chaos it caused. When Superman comes, he blow up buildings, and nobody ever look at how many people Superman killed, right? I mean, trying to save one person. He knocks down. But, and Batman was like, no, you got to be within law and reason and law, and that kind of thing. And it, very interesting movie if you watch it. That was the subplot or the underlying theme of that movie. Once you transcend Earth and all its bounds, as Superman did, you can do whatever you want to.
You can, yeah.
In the name of goodness. And that's that Caesar with the heart of Christ kind of thing.
Which is exactly what some of our leaders, our dear leaders today are doing. Acting like super people.
Right.
It was just a small exchange about, there's a bill to ban the sale of AR-15s. But in this bill, there's all kinds of carve-outs for Department of Education, the Internal Revenue Service, Department of Agriculture. They not only are allowed to purchase AR-15s, they have quite the arsenals. And
millions and billions of rounds.
Yeah, when this came up, and the answer, it's like, hey, what aren't the Department of Agriculture, and they're supposed to help the farmers? Department of Education is supposed to help children. Oh yeah, but they have their own policing unit, so it's very obvious they need to have guns. Not even thinking about why do they need a policing unit? And that is that arrogance that we're supreme. We know what's good for you.
On my final note, let me drive home two points that help people at home stay sane in what you're about to witness. Because we've been going through this. White supremacy operates off of two things. One, don't be confused that they're confused. Why would the IRS need guns and bullets? No, it's quite clear.
Know
don't
why,
be confused. Exactly. Don't be confused. They're confused. And number two, because I say so.
Right.
That's
ultimate.
That's their own. Yeah, because I say so. Why are we changing that? Because I say so. Why is it not an inflation? Because I say so. Why? And that's how this system operates.
It's the expert. It's the expert class. It's trust the science, trust the experts because they say so.
Right. Because I say so.
Well, I think we're learning.
Even if it contradicts what I said last time.
Yes. Okay,
so.
Yeah. And I think we're slowly, some people are starting to learn that maybe they're full of shit. Certainly like masks, vaccines, working, not working, inflation. You get enough of these missers and people start to say, well, you said so, but you were kind of wrong. I hope.
And then it's shut up.
I hope.
Shut up and get in your house.
Just
don't come out.
Hey, cancel Cano. Get rid of you.
All right, so that's my wrap on evolution.
I love it. I have a feeling we'll be continuing this trend. This is not over. We have more to discuss here when it comes to American eugenics
and American Nazis, because we got to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah.
But as I always say, pay attention to everything, and the truth will reveal itself.
And we look forward to revealing more the next time on Moe Factz with Adam Curry. Thank you so much, Mo. I had another blast.
Same as well, Adam. Take care.
All right, everybody. We'll see you next time here on Moe Factz with Adam Curry.
Mothers are modern today, and I ain't knocking being modern. My mother was an old-time woman, though. She was quite basic. And she loved me because I was her baby. And she wanted to protect me. And I remember my first love affair. Somehow or another, the whole darn thing went wrong. My mother had some great advice. So I thought I'd put it in the words of this song. She told me, she said, right now. Only the strong survive. Only the strong survive. You got to be strong.